The rain came down hard that October morning, turning the streets of San Diego into rivers of gray. Catherine Reeves sat in the back of the taxi, watching water stream down the window, distorting the world outside into something unrecognizable. That felt appropriate somehow. Everything in her life had become distorted, unrecognizable, twisted into shapes she no longer understood. She was 24 years old and felt ancient. The taxi pulled up to the gates of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, and Kat stepped out into the downpour with a single duffel bag slung over her shoulder. The bag was standard issue green, worn at the corners, containing everything she owned. 3 uniforms, basic toiletries, a waterproof case holding documents she wished she could burn. Nothing else. No photos, no mementos, no fragments of a past worth remembering. The Marine at the gate checked her identification with the mechanical efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times. His eyes barely registered her face. Good. That was exactly what she wanted. To be invisible. To be nobody. To disappear into the machinery of military life and never surface again. Welcome to Coronado, the Marine said, handing back her ID card. Medical facilities are Building 7. Someone from personnel will meet you there. Kat nodded and walked through the gate. The rain soaked through her jacket within seconds, but she did not quicken her pace. Pain was good. Discomfort was good. It kept her anchored in the present moment, preventing her mind from drifting back to places she could not afford to visit. The base sprawled before her like a small city, buildings arranged in neat rows, palm trees bending under the weight of the storm. In the distance, she could see the ocean, gray and violent, waves crashing against the shore with the kind of force that could kill a person in seconds. She had seen that kind of force before. She had felt it crushing down on her, stealing her breath, trying to drag her into darkness. Her hands started to shake. She forced them still. Building 7 appeared through the rain, a 3-story structure with the words Naval Medical Facility stenciled above the entrance. Kat stood outside for a long moment, staring at those words. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where nobody knew her name, her history, the things she had done and failed to do. The reassignment had been labeled administrative, a routine rotation of personnel. Nothing in her official file indicated why she really needed to leave her previous posting. Nothing indicated the nightmares that woke her screaming, or the way her hands trembled whenever she heard the sound of rushing water. The door opened and a woman emerged, older, maybe 60, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. She wore the uniform of a Navy commander, Medical Corps insignia gleaming on her collar. Petty Officer Reeves, the woman said. Her voice was firm but not unkind. I am Commander Patricia Morrison, Chief of Medical Services. Welcome to Coronado. Kat saluted, the movement automatic, ingrained through years of training. Thank you, ma'am. Commander Morrison returned the salute and gestured toward the entrance. Come inside before you drown out here. We can do the paperwork where it is dry. The interior of the medical facility smelled like every military hospital Kat had ever known. Antiseptic and floor wax and something underneath that might have been fear or hope or desperation. The combination made her stomach twist, but she followed Commander Morrison down a corridor lined with office doors and framed certificates celebrating excellence in military medicine. They entered a small office overlooking the base courtyard. Morrison settled behind a desk covered with neat stacks of paperwork and gestured for Kat to sit. For a moment, neither spoke. The commander studied her with eyes that seemed to see past the uniform, past the carefully neutral expression, down into the places Kat tried to keep hidden. Your record is impressive, Morrison said finally. Top of your class in Field Medical Service School, advanced trauma certifications, multiple commendations for performance under pressure. She paused. And yet here you are requesting assignment to a training base. Most people with your credentials want to deploy forward, not backward. Kat kept her face neutral, her voice steady. I felt I could be more useful in a training environment, ma'am, passing on knowledge to the next generation. Morrison's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Knowledge that suggested she knew this answer was carefully rehearsed, a shield against questions Kat did not want to answer. Your previous assignment is listed as classified, Morrison continued. I will not pry into details above my clearance level. But I will tell you this. Whatever happened before, whatever you are carrying, this base can be a place to heal. We see a lot of young people here who need to learn how to save lives. Some of them also need to learn how to save themselves. The words hit harder than Kat expected. She swallowed, forced herself to meet Morrison's gaze. I am here to work, ma'am, nothing more. Morrison nodded slowly. Then let us talk about work. You will be assigned to the base medical clinic. Routine care mostly. Sports injuries, minor illnesses, the occasional training accident. Nothing too demanding. She paused. Unless you want more demanding work. No, ma'am, routine is fine. Very well. Morrison stood and walked to a filing cabinet, extracting a folder and handing it across the desk. Your duty schedule, facility map, and housing assignment. You will share quarters with 3 other corpsmen. They are good people. Try to make friends. Kat took the folder and stood. She knew she would not make friends. Friends asked questions. Friends wanted to know your story. Friends became people you could lose, and she had lost enough people to last several lifetimes. Dismissed, Morrison said. Report to the clinic at 0700 tomorrow. Get some rest tonight. You look like you need it. Kat saluted and left the office. Rest. The word was almost funny. She could not remember the last time she had slept more than 3 hours without waking in a cold sweat, heart hammering, lungs fighting for air that felt like it was not there. The rain had stopped by the time she found her assigned housing, a 2-story barracks building on the eastern edge of the base. She climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor and located her room. The door was unlocked. Inside, 3 bunks were already claimed, personal items scattered around with the casual disorder of people who felt at home. The 4th bunk, in the corner, near the window, was bare. That would be hers. Kat dropped her duffel on the thin mattress and sat down. Through the window, she could see the obstacle course where SEAL candidates trained, the same course she had run years ago when she was younger and stupider and thought she could save the world. A group of trainees was running it now, soaked and exhausted, pushing through the pain because quitting was worse than suffering. She understood that. She had been pushing through pain for 18 months, ever since the night her entire world exploded into fire and salt water and screaming that would not stop, no matter how tightly she pressed her hands over her ears. Her phone buzzed. A text message from a number she did not recognize. Heard you made it to Coronado. Glad you are still fighting. Stay strong. No signature, no name. But Kat knew who had sent it. There was only one person from her previous life who still checked on her, still tried to pull her back from the edge she walked every single day. She deleted the message without responding. Staying strong implied there was strength left to access. She was not strong. She was broken pieces held together by routine and duty, in the thin hope that maybe, eventually, the nightmares would fade. They never did. The next morning arrived too quickly. Kat woke at 0500 from a dream about drowning, sheets soaked with sweat, lungs burning as if she had truly been underwater. She forced herself through her morning routine with mechanical precision. Shower, uniform, tie boots, check appearance in mirror. The woman staring back looked nothing like the person she used to be. That person had smiled occasionally. That person had believed in things like courage and honor and happy endings. The clinic was already busy when she arrived, early as always. A young corpsman was restocking supplies in the triage area, humming something that might have been country music. He looked up when Kat entered and offered a friendly smile. You must be the new transfer, he said. AM Hospital Corpsman, 2nd Class Rodriguez. Everyone calls me Rod. He stuck out a hand. Kat shook it briefly. Petty Officer Reeves. Well, Petty Officer Reeves, welcome to the easiest gig in the Navy. We mostly deal with sprains and strains and the occasional idiot who thinks he can drink his body weight in beer. He grinned. Not exactly exciting, but it beats getting shot at. Kat did not respond. Rodriguez's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. Right. Well, Commander Morrison left you a list of orientation tasks, inventory, familiarization with equipment, that sort of thing. Let me know if you need anything. He retreated to the other side of the clinic, and Kat was grateful for the space. She found the task list and buried herself in work, counting bandages, organizing medications, checking expiration dates on IV supplies, tasks that required no thought, no emotion, no connection to anything that mattered. The morning passed in a blur of routine. A trainee came in with a twisted ankle. Kat wrapped it, provided crutches, sent him on his way. An officer needed blood pressure medication refilled. Kat processed the prescription without looking at his face. Another trainee complained of flu symptoms. Kat took his temperature, swabbed for rapid tests, prescribed rest and fluids. Every interaction was brief, professional, forgettable. Exactly how she wanted it. Around noon, the clinic doors burst open and two men carried in a third, his face pale and twisted with pain. Training accident, one of them gasped. He fell during fast rope drills, 20 feet onto concrete. Kat's training took over before her mind could catch up. She directed them to place the injured man on an examination table and began assessment with swift, practiced movements. Airway clear, breathing rapid but adequate, pulse strong but elevated, pupils equal and reactive. No obvious head trauma. But when her hands moved to his chest, he screamed. Ribs, Kat said to Rodriguez, who had appeared at her side, possibly punctured lung. Get me a chest x-ray cart and page Commander Morrison. Rodriguez moved quickly, but Kat was already working. She palpated the injured man's chest, feeling for the telltale signs of displaced ribs, listening for abnormal breath sounds. The trainee was young, maybe 19, with the kind of face that probably smiled easily when it was not contorted in agony. What is your name? Kat asked, keeping her voice calm and steady. Jenkins, he gasped. Seaman Jenkins. All right, Jenkins, I need you to stay still while I examine you. This is going to hurt, but I need to know what we are dealing with. She continued her assessment, and something felt wrong. Not just broken ribs, something more. She placed her stethoscope against his chest and listened. Breath sounds on the left side were diminished, significantly diminished. And when she looked at his neck, she could see the jugular veins beginning to distend. Tension pneumothorax. The words fell into her mind like stones into dark water. And suddenly she was not in a bright clinic in California. She was in darkness, in cold water, in a space so confined she could barely move, with a man dying in front of her and no time, never enough time. Her hands started to shake. The room seemed to tilt. She could hear water rushing in her ears, feel pressure building in her chest, stealing her breath the way it had stolen so many other things. Petty Officer Reeves. Commander Morrison's voice cut through the fog. Kat blinked and found herself staring at the commander, who had appeared beside the examination table with the calm authority of someone who had faced 10,000 emergencies and survived them all. Report, Morrison said. Kat forced her hands still, forced her voice to work. Possible tension pneumothorax. Diminished breath, sounds left side. JVD present. Tracheal deviation minimal but developing. Morrison listened to Jenkins's chest herself, then looked at Kat with an expression that was hard to read. You are correct. We need immediate decompression or he will arrest. She turned to Rodriguez. Get me a 14-gauge needle and prep for chest tube insertion. Rodriguez moved toward the supply cabinet, but he was moving too slowly. Training accident protocols required supervisor approval before invasive procedures. By the time they got authorization and assembled the right equipment, Jenkins could be in full cardiac arrest. Kat watched the young man's face growing paler, watched his breathing becoming more labored, watched the life starting to drain from his eyes. She had seen this before. She had seen it in faces she loved, in men who trusted her to save them, in the moments before everything went wrong and wrong and wrong. Her hands stopped shaking. Something shifted inside her. Some part of herself she had tried to bury rising to the surface like a body from deep water. Without consciously deciding to move, she found herself reaching for the supply cart, finding a large bore needle exactly where muscle memory told her it would be. She tore open the sterile packaging with practiced efficiency, located the second intercostal space on Jenkins' chest by touch alone, and drove the needle home in one smooth motion. The rush of air was immediate and unmistakable. Jenkins gasped, color flooding back into his face as his compressed lung began to re-expand. The distended veins in his neck flattened. His breathing eased. Kat withdrew the needle and placed an occlusive dressing, her hands moving with a precision and speed that came from somewhere beyond conscious thought, somewhere that remembered doing this procedure in conditions far worse than a well-lit clinic, somewhere that remembered saving lives when death was so close she could feel its breath on her neck. She stepped back from the table, and reality crashed down around her. Commander Morrison was staring at her with an expression that contained surprise and something else. Recognition, maybe, or suspicion. Rodriguez stood frozen with the supply kit still in his hands, mouth slightly open. That was needle decompression, Morrison said slowly. Advanced trauma procedure. Not typically performed by junior corpsmen without direct supervision. Kat said nothing, Her hands had started shaking again. "Where did you learn that technique?" Morrison asked. Her voice was gentle but insistent. "Field Medical Service School," Kat said. The lie came easily because it was partly true. She had learned basic needle decompression at FEMSS. She just had not mentioned learning the advanced version somewhere else. Somewhere classified. Somewhere that had cost her everything. FMSS teaches the theory, Morrison said. But that was not theory. That was expert-level execution. Textbook perfect placement, ideal angle of insertion, appropriate depth without overshooting. She paused. "I have only seen that level of skill in corpsmen who have worked with special operations units." The words hung in the air like smoke. Kat met Morrison's gaze and said nothing. Silence was safer than lies. Lies could be investigated. Silence could only be interpreted. Jenkins was breathing easier now, his color good, pain visibly reduced. Rodriguez had recovered enough to begin setting up for chest tube insertion, which would be necessary for definitive treatment. But the immediate crisis had passed. The young man would live. "Good work," Morrison said finally. She turned to Rodriguez. "Finish prep for tube thoracostomy. I will place it myself." Then she looked back at Kat. "Petty Officer Reeves, my office when your shift ends." It was not a request. Kat spent the rest of the day in a fog of dread. She performed her duties mechanically, treating minor ailments and filling out paperwork with hands that refused to stay completely steady. Other staff members looked at her differently now. Word had spread about the needle decompression, about the way she had moved with such confidence and precision. They whispered when they thought she could not hear. "Did you see how fast she was?" Commander Morrison said it was perfect technique. "I heard she has special operations background." Kat wanted to scream at them to stop, to leave her alone, to let her disappear back into the comfortable anonymity she had worked so hard to build. But she said nothing and kept her head down and counted the minutes until her shift ended. When she finally knocked on Morrison's office door, the sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded her of fire, of explosions, of the moment when everything she loved turned to ash and smoke. "Come in." Morrison sat behind her desk, Kat's personnel file open in front of her. The file was thick, filled with documents and evaluations and records of service. But Kat knew there were pages missing. Sections redacted. 18 months of her life reduced to a single line. Previous assignment classified. "Sit down," Morrison said. Kat sat. She kept her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap, her face neutral. All the armor she had learned to wear. "I made some calls this afternoon," Morrison said. "Reached out to some old contacts in the medical community, asked about corpsmen with advanced trauma training who might be rotating through Coronado." She closed the file and looked directly at Kat. Nobody would confirm anything, but nobody would deny anything either. Which tells me everything I need to know. Kat remained silent. "I am not going to force you to talk about your previous assignment," Morrison continued. "Classified means classified, and I respect that. But I am going to tell you something, and I want you to listen carefully." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to something softer, more personal. "I served in Vietnam. I was a nurse in a field hospital, 19 years old, treating boys who were barely older than children. I saw things that still wake me up at night 50 years later. And when I came home, I tried to hide too." Kat felt something crack inside her chest. A tiny fissure in the wall she had built around her heart. "Hiding does not work," Morrison said. "It only delays the reckoning. Eventually you have to face what you are running from." She paused. "Or it will destroy you." "I am not running from anything," Kat said. Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Then why are you here instead of out there?" Morrison gestured toward the window, toward the ocean, toward the world beyond the safety of this quiet base. "Why is someone with your obvious skills treating sprained ankles and sore throats?" Kat had no answer, or rather, she had too many answers, and none of them were things she could speak aloud. "I will make you a deal," Morrison said. "I will not pry into your past, but I am going to ask you to help with something. We run a combat medic training program here for junior corpsmen preparing for deployment. Most of my instructors are competent, but none of them have recent field experience. I think you do. I think you have the kind of experience that could save lives." "No," Kat said immediately. "I am not qualified to teach." "You performed a perfect needle decompression under pressure," Morrison said. "You are more qualified than anyone else I have." Kat stood up, her heart pounding. "With respect, ma'am, I am here to work in the clinic, not to teach. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, I will not force you, but the offer stands. Think about it. Kat left the office feeling like she had escaped something dangerous. Teaching meant being visible. It meant students who would ask questions and look up to her and trust her with their careers and maybe their lives. She could not carry that weight. She could barely carry her own. That night, she lay in her bunk and stared at the ceiling. Her roommates were out somewhere, doing whatever people did when they still knew how to be happy. The barracks were quiet except for the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. Kat closed her eyes and immediately saw their faces. 12 of them. 12 men who had trusted her, who had believed she could keep them alive. 12 men who died because she had made a choice, and the choice had been wrong, and there was no going back to unmake it. Lieutenant Commander Eric Donovan, the team leader, 35 years old with a wife and 2 daughters, he had treated Kat like a little sister, protected her, believed in her even when she did not believe in herself. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, the senior enlisted, 14 years in the teams. He could have survived anything except the thing that killed him. Petty Officer First Class James Rodriguez, the breacher, 28 years old. He had been planning to propose to his girlfriend when they got home. The names went on, a litany of the dead that Kat recited every night like a prayer, or maybe like a punishment. She deserved to remember them. She deserved to carry their weight forever. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Stop punishing yourself. They would not want that. Kat deleted the message. Whoever sent these did not understand. Punishment was all she had left. Without it, she was nothing but empty space where a person used to be. 3 weeks passed in a haze of routine. Kat worked her shifts at the clinic, treated minor ailments, avoided conversation, and spent her free time alone. She ran every morning before dawn, pushing her body until it screamed for mercy because physical pain was easier to bear than the other kind. She ate in the dining facility during off-peak hours when fewer people were around. She did her laundry at midnight. She became a ghost, haunting the edges of the base, present but not really there. And then the storm came. It started as a weather warning, a tropical system moving up from Baja California, expected to bring heavy rain and high winds to the San Diego area. Most people on base prepared with mild annoyance, securing loose equipment and stocking up on coffee and snacks for what would probably be a wet but manageable few days. Kat prepared differently. She checked the medical clinic's emergency supplies 3 times. She reviewed mass casualty protocols that had not been updated in years. She made sure she knew where every piece of equipment was located, every exit route, every backup generator. Rodriguez noticed. You expecting a war, he asked, watching her inventory trauma supplies for the 2nd time that afternoon. Just being thorough, Kat said. The storm looks bad, but it is not a hurricane. We will be fine. Kat said nothing. She had learned that nature could kill you just as dead as bullets, sometimes deader. The rain started that evening, light at first, then building to a steady downpour that turned the base into a water world. Kat lay in her bunk listening to water hammer against the roof, and every drop sounded like the ocean closing over her head. She got up at 0200, unable to sleep, and dressed in her uniform. Something felt wrong. The air had that electric quality that came before lightning strikes, before explosions, before moments when everything changed forever. The clinic was empty when she arrived, lights on but no staff present. She began her rounds anyway, checking equipment, ensuring readiness. At 0315, her radio crackled to life. All medical personnel report immediately. Mass casualty event, training accident during night operations. Multiple injuries. Kat grabbed a trauma bag and ran. The scene was chaos. A training exercise had gone catastrophically wrong when the storm caused a helicopter to make an emergency landing on the beach. The aircraft had clipped a light pole on descent and crashed hard, injuring 6 trainees who had been conducting small boat operations nearby. By the time Kat arrived, other medical staff were already working, but it was clear they were overwhelmed. Rodriguez was trying to manage triage with limited supplies. Commander Morrison was performing CPR on a trainee who had gone into cardiac arrest. 2 other corpsmen were frantically treating wounds they did not have the experience to handle properly. Kat stood frozen for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. This was exactly what she had been avoiding. This was exactly what she had run from. Then she heard screaming. A young man, maybe 20, pinned under part of the helicopter's landing gear, his leg twisted at an angle that meant shattered bones and possibly severed arteries. He was going to bleed out in minutes if someone did not act. Kat moved. She dropped to her knees beside the trapped trainee, her hands already assessing the injury. Compound fracture of the femur, significant arterial bleeding, the kind of wound that killed people on battlefields when medics were not fast enough, or skilled enough, or lucky enough. But Kat had been all three once, and muscle memory did not forget. She applied a tourniquet high on the thigh with the kind of speed and precision that came from doing it 100 times in conditions far worse than this. She exposed the wound, packed it with hemostatic gauze, applied pressure. She started an IV line while simultaneously directing two nearby personnel to help lift the landing gear enough to free the trapped leg. "How do you know what to do?" one of them asked, staring at her. "Just do it," Kat snapped. They lifted. She pulled the trainee free. His femoral artery was partially severed, blood pumping out in rhythm with his fading heartbeat. Kat had maybe 90 seconds before he lost consciousness, 2 minutes before irreversible damage, 3 before death. Her hands moved like they belonged to someone else, someone competent, someone who saved lives instead of losing them. She clamped the artery with a hemostat, an advanced field procedure that most corpsmen would never attempt outside a surgical suite. She stabilized the fracture with a traction splint designed for exactly this kind of injury. She managed his airway, his breathing, his circulation, moving through the steps of trauma care with a fluidity that looked like art, but was really just survival instinct refined into science. The trainee's eyes focused on her face. "You are going to be okay," Kat heard herself say. "I have got you." She had said those words before, to men who died anyway, to men whose blood had covered her hands as life slipped away despite everything she did. But this one time, the trainee stabilized. His bleeding slowed, his pulse strengthened, his breathing steadied. Kat looked up and found Morrison staring at her. Rodriguez was staring. Every medical person on scene was staring. Because they had just watched her perform a procedure that required years of specialized training and combat experience. They had watched her move with a confidence and skill that revealed everything she had been trying to hide. Morrison spoke quietly. That was vascular access and hemorrhage control at the level of a special operations medic. Kat said nothing. Her hands were shaking again. The trainee was stable, alive, saved, and she had just destroyed her carefully constructed invisibility. "My office," Morrison said. "Tomorrow morning, 0800. This time it was not a request. It was an order. Kat nodded and stood. Her uniform was covered in blood. Her hands were steady now, but inside she was falling apart. Because saving this one life had cracked open all the memories of the lives she could not save. She walked away from the crash site, away from the stairs, away from everyone. She walked until she reached the edge of the base where land met ocean, and she stood there in the rain and the darkness and let herself remember. The submarine, the cold, the pressure, the impossible choice, the explosion that ended everything. Eric Donovan looking at her one last time. "Live for us," he had said. "Become the legend we know you can be." But she had not become a legend. She had become a ghost, and ghosts could not save anyone. Kat dropped to her knees on the wet sand and finally let herself cry. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief, but the kind of sobbing that came from a place so deep it had no bottom. The kind that shook her entire body and made sounds she did not know a human throat could make. She cried for the 12 men who died. She cried for the mission that failed. She cried for the choice she had made and the price it had cost. She cried for the person she used to be before that night turned her into this broken thing. And when she was done crying, when there were no tears left and her throat was raw and her chest ached, she stood up. Because that was what you did. You stood up. You kept going. You survived. Even when you did not want to. The next morning, Kat reported to Morrison's office exactly at 0800. She had not slept. She had showered and changed into a clean uniform. But she knew she looked like hell. Felt like it too. Morrison was waiting with 2 cups of coffee. She pushed one across the desk toward Kat. "Sit." Kat sat and took the coffee. It was hot and strong and tasted like absolution she had not earned. "I'm going to ask you one question," Morrison said. "And I want an honest answer. Were you assigned to a special operations unit?" Kat met her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." Morrison nodded as if this confirmed something she already knew. "I thought so. The techniques you used last night are not taught in standard corpsman training." She sipped her coffee. "How long?" 2 years with a SEAL team." "Which team?" "That information is classified, ma'am." Morrison accepted this without argument. What happened? Kat's throat closed. She could not say it, could not speak the words that would make it real all over again. You do not have to tell me the details, Morrison said gently, but I can see what it did to you. I can see someone carrying more weight than any person should have to bear. She leaned forward. Catherine, whatever happened, you cannot hide from it forever. You cannot save lives during emergencies and then pretend to be ordinary the rest of the time. People are starting to notice. People are starting to ask questions. Let them ask, Kat said. I did not request this attention. No, but you earned it. Morrison's voice was firm now. You saved that young man's life last night. You saved Jenkins with that needle decompression. You have skills that could train an entire generation of corpsmen to be better at their jobs. And you are wasting those skills because you are afraid. I am not afraid. I am realistic. My skills were not good enough when it mattered most. 12 men died because I was not good enough. The words came out before she could stop them, raw and jagged and true. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood and walked to a filing cabinet. She extracted a folder and placed it on the desk. Inside was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. This is from 1971, Morrison said. Battle of Firebase Ripcord, Vietnam. I was stationed at an evac hospital. We got hit by enemy artillery while treating casualties. 17 wounded soldiers in our care when the shells started falling. She pointed to a name in the article. This man died on my watch. Sergeant William Chen, 23 years old. He died because I prioritized another patient who I thought had a better chance of survival. I made a choice. Kat stared at the clipping, at the name of a man dead for over 50 years. For 30 years, I carried his death like a stone around my neck, Morrison continued. I told myself I was not good enough, that I should have saved him, that his blood was on my hands. She closed the folder. And then one day a doctor I respected told me something that changed my life. She looked directly at Kat. He said triage is not about who lives and who dies. It is about maximizing survival when resources are limited. When you make the hard choice to save the savable and let go of the unsavable, that is not failure. That is the job. But I made the wrong choice, Kat whispered. Did you? Morrison's voice was gentle but insistent. Or did you make the only choice possible, and it just happened to end badly? Kat had no answer. She had asked herself this question 10,000 times and never found an answer that brought peace. I am going to give you an assignment, Morrison said. Starting Monday, you will co-teach the Advanced Combat Medic course, 2 hours twice a week. You will teach them the techniques you know, the ones that save lives in impossible situations. Kat shook her head. I cannot. You can, and you will, because that is an order, Petty Officer Reeves. They stared at each other across the desk. Kat wanted to refuse, wanted to walk out, wanted to disappear completely. But she was still a sailor, still bound by duty and rank in the chain of command. Yes, ma'am, she said quietly. Morrison's expression softened. I am not doing this to punish you, Catherine. I am doing this because I have been where you are, and I know that the only way through is forward. You cannot hide from your skills any more than you can hide from your past. She paused. So stop trying. Kat left the office feeling like she had lost a battle she did not know she was fighting. But somewhere buried deep beneath the grief and guilt and fear, a tiny part of her wondered if maybe Morrison was right. Maybe the only way through was forward. Maybe the only way to honor the dead was to keep saving the living. Maybe there was still a purpose for someone as broken as she had become. She walked across the base toward the training facility where she would soon be teaching young corpsmen how to save lives in combat. The morning sun was breaking through the clouds, turning the puddles from last night's storm into mirrors that reflected the sky. Kat looked down at her reflection in one of those puddles. For just a moment, she saw not the ghost she had become, but a shadow of the person she used to be. The person who believed she could make a difference. The person who was not afraid. The person who died the same night 12 good men died in the cold darkness beneath the waves. But maybe that person was not completely gone. Maybe some part of her still existed, waiting to be found again. Kat took a breath and kept walking toward whatever came next. Because that was what you did. You survived. And if you were very lucky, you found a way to make survival mean something. The classroom smelled like chalk dust and old coffee. 20 young corpsmen sat in rows of metal chairs, notebooks open, eyes bright with the kind of eagerness that came from not yet knowing how ugly the world could be. They looked at Kat like she held secrets they needed to survive. Maybe she did. That was the problem. That was them. She stood at the front of the room with her hands clasped behind her back to hide the trembling. Commander Morrison sat in the corner, observing but not interfering. The message was clear. This was Kat's show now, sink or swim. "Good morning," Kat said. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "I am Petty Officer First Class Reeves. I will be teaching advanced trauma care procedures for the next 8 weeks." A hand went up immediately. Young man in the second row, barely old enough to shave. "Have you deployed, ma'am?" Kat felt the question like a physical blow. "Yes." "Where?" "That information is classified." The room went quiet. They were measuring her now, trying to decide if she was the real thing or just another instructor who had never left the safety of stateside bases. Kat knew what they were thinking because she had thought the same things once, back when she was their age and stupid enough to believe war was about glory instead of survival. "Let me tell you what I can tell you," Kat said. "I have treated gunshot wounds in places where the nearest hospital was 6 hours away. I have performed surgery with equipment designed for field use, not operating rooms. I have made decisions about who lives and who doesn't when there was not enough time or supplies or hope to save everyone." She paused. "If you think that makes me special, you are wrong. It just makes me someone who has seen what happens when training fails." The young man in the second row looked chastened. The others leaned forward. "We are going to start with hemorrhage control," Kat continued, "because bleeding is what kills most combat casualties. Not bullets, not bombs, blood loss. And if you cannot stop bleeding fast, nothing else you do will matter." She moved to the training mannequin at the front of the room and demonstrated tourniquet application with movements that had been burned into her muscle memory through repetition and necessity. Her hands moved with a speed and precision that made the procedure look simple. It was not simple. It was life and death compressed into 60 seconds of controlled violence against the human body. "Time yourself," she told them. "In combat, you have 1 minute to get this right. After that, your patient starts losing consciousness. After 3 minutes, they start dying. After 5 minutes, they are gone." She watched them practice on each other, moving through the rows to correct technique and answer questions. Some of them were good, most were adequate. A few would get people killed if they did not improve. Kat told them this without sugarcoating. They needed to know. After 2 hours, Morrison dismissed the class. The corpsmen filed out, talking excitedly about what they had learned. Kat started packing up her training materials, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical effort. "You did well," Morrison said. "I terrified them." "Good. Fear keeps people sharp." Morrison walked to the window overlooking the training yard. "There is someone I want you to meet. He is going to be observing your next class." Kat felt her stomach tighten. "Who?" "Senior Chief Marcus Webb. He runs the SEAL training pipeline." Morrison glanced back at her. "He is the best combat medic instructor we have ever had. If anyone can spot real experience, it is him." Kat's hands went cold. A SEAL instructor. Someone who would know exactly what kind of training she had. Someone who might ask questions she could not answer. "Is there a problem?" Morrison asked. "No, ma'am." "Good. He will be here Thursday." Morrison left without another word. Kat stood alone in the empty classroom and wondered how much longer she could keep running from herself. Thursday arrived too quickly. Kat spent the intervening days preparing lesson plans with obsessive detail, trying to create enough structure to hide behind. She taught her second class on airway management, demonstrating intubation techniques on training dummies while 20 pairs of eyes watched her every move. They were getting better, learning, trusting her. That trust felt like weight pressing down on her chest. After class, she was cleaning up when the door opened. The man who walked in was maybe 58, built like someone who had spent decades turning his body into a weapon. His face was weathered and scarred, the kind of face that had seen too much sun and too much combat. He wore khaki pants and a simple black shirt with no rank insignia, but he carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had commanded men in places where command meant keeping them alive. "Senior Chief Webb," he said, extending a hand. "Mind if I sit in on your next class?" Kat shook his hand. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. Up close, she could see old burn scars on his forearms and a long surgical scar running down the right side of his neck. This was a man who had been broken and rebuilt. "Not at all, Senior Chief. Just call me Webb. Everyone does." He glanced around the classroom, taking in the training equipment, the diagrams on the whiteboard, the careful organization of supplies. Morrison tells me you have a gift for trauma care. Commander Morrison is generous with praise. Webb smiled slightly. Patricia Morrison does not do generous. She does honest. If she says you are good, you are good. He picked up one of the training tourniquets and examined it. These are the new CAT tourniquets, SOF standard issue. Most regular corpsmen still use the older models. Kat said nothing. She had grabbed the newer tourniquets without thinking, muscle memory reaching for the equipment she was accustomed to using. Where did you serve? Webb asked. His tone was casual, but Kat recognized an interrogation when she heard one. I would rather not discuss my previous assignment, Senior Chief. Fair enough. Webb set down the tourniquet. But I am going to sit in on your classes, not to judge, to learn. I have been teaching combat medicine for 20 years, but I have a feeling you know things I do not. He left before Kat could respond. Over the next 2 weeks, Webb attended every class Kat taught. He sat in the back row with a notebook, watching everything, saying nothing. His presence made her hyper-aware of every word she spoke, every technique she demonstrated. She knew he was cataloging details, building a profile of who she really was beneath the carefully maintained facade. The classes themselves became easier. Kat found a rhythm in teaching, a way to channel everything she knew into something useful instead of letting it rot inside her. She taught them advanced wound packing, needle decompression, emergency cricothyrotomy for airway obstruction, techniques most corpsmen would never use but needed to know existed. And she taught them the thing nobody else would say out loud. Sometimes you cannot save everyone. Sometimes you have to choose. One afternoon, she created a scenario that haunted her dreams. Multiple casualties, limited supplies, not enough time to treat everyone. Make the call. A young woman named Hayes was the first to freeze. She stood over 3 mannequins representing wounded Marines, tears streaming down her face, unable to decide who to help first. I cannot do this, Hayes said. I cannot choose. Kat walked over and knelt beside the mannequins. In combat, not choosing is choosing. If you freeze, everyone dies. If you triage properly, the maximum number survive. She pointed to each mannequin. This one has a tension pneumothorax, 5 minutes to live without intervention. This one has an amputated leg with tourniquet already applied. He is stable for now. This one has abdominal trauma and is unconscious. Unknown internal injuries. She looked up at Hayes. Who do you treat first? Hayes wiped her eyes. The pneumothorax, because he will die fastest. Correct. Why not the abdominal trauma? Because I do not know if I can save him, and while I am trying, the other 2 might die. Kat nodded. That is triage, not about fairness, about math. Cold, brutal math that gives the most people the best chance. She stood. It will haunt you. Every choice will haunt you. But making the hard choice is better than making no choice at all. After class, Webb approached her. That was the hardest lesson I have ever seen taught. It is the most important one. Where did you learn it? Kat met his eyes. The same place you learned it, Senior Chief. In the field, when it mattered. Something passed between them in that moment. Recognition, understanding, the shared knowledge that came only from seeing people die and carrying the weight of those deaths forever. You worked with a SEAL team, Webb said. It was not a question. Kat did not deny it. I cannot discuss my previous assignment. I know. Webb was quiet for a moment. I lost my entire team in Afghanistan. 2011, Helmand Province. 8 men went into a compound. I was the only one who came out. Kat felt her breath catch. I am sorry. Everyone says that, but they do not understand. They think the hard part is surviving when everyone else dies. Webb's voice was quiet, almost gentle. The hard part is figuring out how to make that survival mean something. How do you do it? I teach. I pass on what they taught me. I make sure their knowledge does not die with them. He looked at her directly. That is what you are doing too, whether you admit it or not. Kat wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was just following orders, that teaching meant nothing compared to the weight of her failures. But the words would not come. Walk with me, Webb said. They left the training building and walked across the base toward the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Kat of fire. Always fire. Webb walked with the measured pace of someone who had learned patience through suffering. When they reached the sand, Webb stopped and stared out at the ocean. I was a medic before I became an instructor, he said. Best in my platoon, maybe best in the battalion. I could do things under fire that most doctors could not do in a hospital. He paused. The night my team died, I was not with them. I was at base teaching a class just like the ones you are teaching now. Kat waited. They called for extract and I was not there. Another medic went instead. Kid named Danny Rivera, 22 years old on his first deployment. Webb's jaw tightened. The helo got hit by an RPG on approach. Everyone died. My team, the air crew, Danny, all because I was not there. You could not have known. No, but I should have been there. That was my team, my responsibility. For 5 years, I blamed myself, drank too much, pushed away everyone who tried to help, nearly ate my gun more than once. He turned to look at Kat. You know what saved me? Kat shook her head. A kid I had trained, Marine Corpsman deployed to Fallujah. He wrote me a letter saying the techniques I taught him saved 3 lives in a single firefight. 3 Marines went home to their families because I had taught him how to stop bleeding when everyone said it could not be stopped. Webb's expression softened. That is when I understood. I could not save my team, but I could save hundreds of other teams by teaching people like him. Like you. I am not like you. You are exactly like me. You are carrying ghosts and trying to hide from skills that could save lives. You are teaching because someone ordered you to, but you have not accepted that teaching is not a punishment. He gestured toward the ocean. It is the mission, the only mission that matters now. Kat stared at the waves. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think that teaching 20 young corpsmen could somehow balance the scale against 12 dead SEALs. But the math did not work. It would never work. Tell me what happened, Webb said quietly. I cannot. Not classified. I am not asking for mission details. I am asking what is eating you alive from the inside. Kat closed her eyes. The words rose up like vomit, unstoppable. We went into a submarine, USS Connecticut, sunk by hostile fire in the South China Sea. 52 crew trapped underwater, running out of oxygen. My team had 48 hours to get them out. She opened her eyes but did not look at Webb. I was the medical officer, 22 years old. They put me in charge of keeping people alive in conditions no human should survive. Webb said nothing, just listened. There were 12 men in my team, 12 people I trusted, who trusted me. We got into that submarine and found casualties, bad ones, crush injuries, hypothermia, oxygen deprivation. I had to make choices about who to treat first, who had the best chance, who we could save. Kat's voice broke. I chose wrong. What do you mean? I spent 2 hours performing surgery on 3 casualties who I thought were savable. Emergency procedures that had never been attempted in those conditions. And I saved them. I kept them alive. She turned to face Webb. But while I was doing that, the submarine got hit again. My team leader ordered an evacuation. He put me on the first submersible out with the survivors, told me my job was to get those people to the surface, and my team stayed behind to buy us time. Webb's expression did not change. They died. All 12. The second torpedo hit before they could evacuate. I was already topside when the submarine broke apart. I heard it over the radio. I heard them die. Kat's hands were shaking. If I had not spent 2 hours on those 3 casualties, if I had just stabilized them quickly and moved on, we could have evacuated everyone faster. My team would be alive. Or everyone would be dead, Webb said quietly. What? You saved those 3 casualties using procedures that took 2 hours. If you had not done that, they would have died. And you said there were 52 crew members? 40 were evacuated successfully because you kept them alive long enough to get them out. Your team made a choice. They chose the mission over themselves. That is what SEALs do. He stepped closer. You did not kill them, Catherine. They died doing their job so you could do yours. But I should have been faster. Better, I should have saved everyone. Nobody saves everyone. Webb's voice was firm now. That is not how it works. You make the best choice you can with the information you have, and sometimes people die anyway. That is war. That is medicine. That is life. Kat felt something breaking inside her chest. A wall she had built carefully over 18 months, brick by brick, to keep herself from feeling too much. Webb's words were a hammer against that wall. They gave me a Navy Cross recommendation, she whispered, posthumous, because they thought I died with my team. When they found out I survived, they wanted to give it to me anyway, for saving 40 people. I refused it. Why? Because I do not deserve a medal for being a coward. Coward? Webb's laugh was harsh. You went into a sinking submarine 400 feet underwater. You performed surgery in the dark with enemy action overhead. You saved 40 lives, and you think you are a coward because you survived? I was supposed to die with them. Says who? Your team leader who ordered you to evacuate? The Navy that needed those 40 sailors alive? Or just you punishing yourself because you have survivor guilt? Kat had no answer. I am going to tell you something, and I want you to hear it, Webb said. Your team did not die in vain. They died completing a mission that saved lives, but you are making their sacrifice meaningless by hiding your skills and pretending to be ordinary. You think that honors them? It does not. You want to honor them. Teach every corpsman who will listen. Make sure their expertise, their knowledge, their sacrifice saves lives for the next 50 years. But what if I fail again? Then you fail. But at least you will fail trying instead of failing by hiding. They stood in silence as the sun finished setting. The ocean turned from orange to purple to black, and Kat felt something shift inside her. Not healing, not yet, but maybe the beginning of acceptance. The understanding that she could carry her ghosts without letting them destroy her. I do not know if I can do this, she said. Webb smiled slightly. Nobody knows until they try, but I have seen you teach. You are good at it, better than you think. He started walking back toward the base. Come on, let me buy you terrible coffee from the commissary and tell you stories about the dumbest injuries I have ever treated. You need to laugh, trust me. Kat followed him, and for the first time in 18 months, she felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. The next few weeks transformed Kat's relationship with teaching. Webb attended every class, but now he participated instead of just observing. He shared stories from his own experience, added context to the techniques Kat demonstrated, and most importantly, showed her that teaching was not about being perfect. It was about being honest. One afternoon, Kat was demonstrating emergency tracheotomy when a student asked how many times she had performed the procedure in real combat. Kat hesitated. The honest answer was 4. All 4 patients had survived. But talking about real casualties meant talking about real missions. And real missions led to questions she could not answer. Webb spoke up from the back of the room. Let me tell you about the first time I did a crick. Iraq, 2006. Marine took shrapnel to the throat. Airway completely blocked. Maybe 90 seconds from death. I cut into his neck with a scalpel and jammed in a tube, and I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the damn thing steady. The students were riveted. But you know what? It worked. That Marine lived. Not because I was calm and collected like you see in the movies, because I had trained the procedure so many times that my hands knew what to do, even when my brain was screaming in terror. He looked at Kat. The point is, combat medicine is not about being fearless. It is about being prepared. Kat understood what he was doing, giving her permission to be human, to acknowledge fear without shame. After class, Hayes approached Kat nervously. Ma'am, can I ask you something personal? Kat braced herself. What is it, Hayes? How do you deal with the pressure? Knowing that people's lives depend on getting everything exactly right. Kat thought about lying, thought about giving some inspirational answer about confidence and training. But Webb's words echoed in her mind. Teaching was about being honest. I deal with it poorly, Kat said. I second-guess every decision. I replay every mistake. I carry every loss like a stone in my chest. But I keep going because the alternative is giving up, and giving up means more people die. Hayes blinked. That is the most honest thing any instructor has ever told me. Good. Because you need to know that being scared is normal. Being uncertain is normal. What matters is doing the job anyway. Thank you, ma'am. After Hayes left, Webb smiled at Kat. You are getting the hang of this. What? Being honest about being a mess? Being honest about being human. There is a difference. Kat was beginning to understand that difference, and it was changing her. 3 weeks into the training program, Morrison called Kat into her office. Webb was already there, along with a man Kat did not recognize. He wore civilian clothes but carried himself like military, mid-40s, with the kind of alert stillness that came from intelligence work. Petty Officer Reeves, this is Agent Marcus Chen from NCIS, Morrison said. He has some questions about your previous assignment. Kat's blood ran cold. NCIS meant investigation. Investigation meant exposure. Relax, Agent Chen said, his voice surprisingly gentle. You are not in trouble. I am just trying to close out some paperwork related to Operation Neptune's Fury. The mission was recently declassified, at least the basic details. Kat sat down slowly. What do you need? Chen opened a folder. You were listed as KIA for 6 months before being found alive. Your survival complicated the after-action report. I need you to confirm some details. What kind of details? Your team leader, Lieutenant Commander Eric Donovan. He filed a letter of commendation for you the night before the mission, recommending you for promotion and further special operations training. The letter cited, Chen read from the document, exceptional medical expertise, courage under fire, and the kind of judgment that saves lives when protocols fail. Kat felt tears burning behind her eyes. Eric had written that? He had never told her. The letter also contained a personal note, Chen continued. If anything happens to me, make sure Reeves knows she was the best corpsman I ever worked with. Make sure she keeps saving lives. Kat covered her face with her hands. She could hear Eric's voice saying those words, could see his face the last time she saw him alive. The Navy wants to honor your service, Chen said quietly. The Navy Cross you were recommended for. They want to award it officially, along with the rest of your team, posthumously. No, Kat said. I already told them no. Why? Because I do not deserve it. Ma'am, with respect, Chen said. You saved 40 people. The submarine crew gave statements. They said you performed medical procedures they did not think were possible. You kept people alive in conditions that should have killed them. My team died. Your team completed their mission. That mission was getting those 40 sailors out alive. You were part of that mission. He closed the folder. You can refuse the medal if you want, but you cannot refuse the truth. You were a hero that night, even if you do not feel like one. Kat stood up abruptly. I need air. She walked out of the office and kept walking until she reached the chapel, a small building on the quiet edge of the base. She had not been inside since arriving at Coronado, had not prayed since the night of the rescue, when she had begged God to let her die instead of her team. The chapel was empty and cool, light filtering through simple stained glass windows. Kat sat in the back pew and let herself remember. Eric Donovan, 35, father of 2, the best team leader she had ever known. Chief Petty Officer Danny Wright, 14 years in the teams. He had taught Kat how to stay calm when everything was going wrong. Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez, the breacher. He had planned to propose to his girlfriend when they got home. The names went on, each one a wound that would never fully heal. Kat heard footsteps and looked up. Webb slid into the pew beside her. I told Morrison you would be here, he said. How did you know? Because I know where I went after Agent Chen told me about my team. He gestured around the chapel. Different base, same building. They sat in silence for a while. I do not know how to accept it, Kat said finally. The idea that I did something good when it feels like I failed. Want to know what changed my mind? Please. A mother whose son I had trained wrote me a letter. She said her boy had been killed in action, but before he died, he saved 2 other Marines using techniques I taught him. She thanked me for keeping her son's sacrifice from being meaningless. Webb's voice was thick. That is when I understood. My team's knowledge did not die with them. It lived on through everyone I taught, and now it lives on through the people they teach. That is immortality. That is legacy. Kat closed her eyes. Is that enough? Teaching people I will never meet, saving lives I will never see? It has to be, because it is all we have. They sat together as afternoon faded into evening, 2 broken people trying to figure out how to carry their dead without being crushed by the weight. Finally, Kat spoke. I will accept the medal, not because I think I deserve it, but because Eric wanted me to keep saving lives. Maybe accepting it is part of that. Webb nodded. Good, and there is something else you should know. What? Morrison is recommending you for a permanent teaching position. Head of Advanced Combat Medical Training. You would design the curriculum for every corpsman deploying with Special Operations Forces. Kat stared at him. I am not qualified for that. You are the most qualified person on this base, but you do not have to decide now. Take time. Think about it. Kat thought about Hayes and the other students, about the techniques she had taught them, the knowledge she had passed on, about 40 sailors alive because of choices she had made underwater in the dark. Maybe Webb was right. Maybe this was the mission that mattered now. I will think about it, she said. That is all I ask. They walked out of the chapel together into the California evening. The base was quiet, lights beginning to come on across the installation. Kat looked at the medical facility, the training buildings, the young sailors walking to evening chow. This could be her life now. Not hiding, not running, but building something that honored the people she had lost. It would not bring them back. Nothing could do that. But maybe it could give their deaths meaning beyond the cold math of triage and survival. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Kat took a deep breath of ocean air and felt for the first time since that terrible night like she might actually survive this. Not just survive, live. The weather warning came on a Tuesday morning. Tropical storm Helena, upgraded from a depression overnight, was tracking north from Baja California with winds approaching 70 miles per hour. Expected landfall San Diego County within 48 hours. All personnel advised to secure equipment and prepare for heavy rain and potential flooding. Kat read the bulletin twice, feeling something cold settle in her stomach. Water. Always water. The ocean that had tried to kill her once and might try again. She told herself this was different. A storm, not a combat situation. Rain, not the crushing pressure of 400 feet of salt water. But her hands shook anyway. Webb found her in the supply room, compulsively checking emergency medical kits for the third time that morning. "You worried about the storm?" he asked. "Just being prepared." "Kat, we get tropical storms every few years. This one is not even hurricane strength. We will be fine." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this was routine, manageable, safe. But safe was a word that had lost meaning 18 months ago. "I know," she said. "Old habits." Webb studied her face. "This is about water, is it not? About what happened?" Kat did not answer. Did not need to. Webb understood ghosts better than most. "The storm will pass," he said gently, "and you will be okay. Trust me." She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The next day, the sky turned the color of old bruises. Wind began whipping palm trees into violent motion, sending debris skittering across the base. Rain started mid-afternoon, light at first, then building to a steady drumming that turned streets into rivers. Kat watched from the medical facility windows as the world outside transformed into something gray and hostile. Her class that afternoon was distracted. 20 students kept glancing at the windows, watching the storm intensify. Kat pushed through the lesson plan anyway, teaching them about hypothermia treatment and cold water survival, trying to ignore the irony. Hayes raised a hand. "Ma'am, have you ever treated hypothermia in actual combat conditions?" Kat paused. The honest answer was yes, multiple times. In water so cold it felt like knives cutting through her skin. But talking about that meant talking about things she had promised herself to leave buried. "Yes," she said finally, "it is harder than you think. Cold affects everything. Fingers do not work right. Equipment fails. Patients cannot communicate. You have to work fast because time is even more critical than usual." "What is the hardest part?" another student asked. "Making decisions when you are freezing too. Staying focused when your own body is shutting down." Kat's voice was steady, but her mind was elsewhere. In darkness, in cold, in the desperate scramble to save lives when death was a physical presence in the water around her. The class ended early when the power flickered. Emergency generators kicked in immediately, but Commander Morrison decided to cancel evening training sessions. Everyone not on essential duty was sent to their quarters. Kat did not go to her quarters. She went to the beach. The ocean was furious. Waves crashing against the shore with the kind of violence that could break bones and snap spines. Rain lashed down in sheets, soaking through Kat's jacket in seconds. She stood at the edge of the water and felt the spray on her face, tasted salt, and remembered. USS Connecticut. The name rose up like a ghost ship from the depths of her memory. It had been a classified operation from the start. Intelligence suggested Chinese forces were expanding their submarine presence in disputed waters. The Connecticut had been conducting surveillance when the attack came. 2 torpedoes, Chinese manufacture, hitting the submarine's hull with precision that spoke of advanced knowledge. Someone had leaked the mission. The submarine went down fast. Emergency beacon activated automatically, but rescue vessels were hours away. The crew had oxygen for maybe 48 hours if they were lucky. Most would die long before then from injuries sustained in the attack. That was when someone made the call to send in SEAL Team 3, 12 men plus 1 corpsman. Kat had been 22 years old, barely 3 years out of medical training, but she had the one qualification nobody else had: undersea medical officer certification. She could treat casualties in extreme pressure environments. She could perform surgery in a flooded submarine. In theory. Theory became reality when they dove 400 feet down through black water, following sonar guidance to the crippled submarine. Kat remembered the descent, the way pressure built against her skull, the way her lungs felt compressed even with proper equipment. She remembered thinking this is what dying feels like, and then forcing the thought away because she had a job to do. They entered through the emergency escape trunk, a tight metal tube barely wide enough for one person at a time. Inside, the submarine was a nightmare. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. Water sloshed around their ankles, rising slowly but steadily. 52 crew members huddled in whatever dry spaces remained, and 12 of them were injured badly enough that they needed immediate medical intervention. Kat stood there in the present, rain and ocean spray mixing on her face, and let herself remember all of it. Every terrible detail. Lieutenant Commander Eric Donovan had taken one look at the casualties and made the call. "Reeves, you are in charge of medical. Tell us what you need." Kat had assessed quickly, forcing her training to override the screaming fear in her brain. 3 critical casualties: punctured lung, compound fracture with arterial bleeding, severe head trauma, another 5 with moderate injuries that could become critical without treatment, 4 more with minor wounds that could wait. She had made her choice based on cold mathematics. Save the savable, stabilize the critical, let the hopeless go with morphine and dignity. But when she started working on the first casualty, the one with the punctured lung, she realized that textbook procedures were not going to work. Not here, not in these conditions. She had to improvise, adapt, create medical solutions that had never been attempted before. The surgery took 2 hours. 2 hours of working in near darkness with water rising around them, with the submarine creaking and groaning under pressure, with every breath feeling like it might be her last. She placed a chest tube using equipment designed for field use, not underwater operations. She performed the procedure with hands that shook from cold and fear, but somehow stayed precise enough to thread a tube between ribs without killing the patient. It worked. The first casualty stabilized. Then the second, arterial bleeding. She clamped the femoral artery with a hemostat, a procedure that required surgical precision in an environment where precision should have been impossible. She tied off the vessel with sutures, working by feel as much as sight, praying her frozen fingers would not slip. It worked again. The third casualty, the head trauma, was harder. Depressed skull fracture with likely brain swelling. In a hospital, he would need immediate neurosurgery. In a flooded submarine, Kat could only stabilize him and hope. She managed his airway, monitored his vital signs, and administered medications to reduce intracranial pressure. By the time she finished with the 3 critical patients, 2 hours had passed. 2 hours that felt like 2 years, and that was when everything went wrong. The second torpedo hit. Kat heard it first as a distant thump, then felt the entire submarine lurch sideways. Men screamed. Water pressure changed suddenly, painfully. Somewhere in the aft section, metal tore with a sound like the world ending. "Emergency evacuation," Donovan shouted. "Everyone who can move, get to the escape trunk now." But moving everyone was impossible. Kat had 3 critical patients who could not survive transport without life support. The rest of the wounded were stable but still needed help. And the submarine was flooding fast, compartments sealing automatically to prevent total loss. Donovan made the call that would haunt Kat forever. "Reeves, you take the first group out, get the stable casualties and as many crew as the submersible can carry. We will follow with the critical patients." "No," Kat had said. "The critical patients need me. I am not leaving them. You are the only one with undersea medical certification. If you die here, those 3 men you just saved die anyway because nobody else can keep them alive during ascent." Donovan's voice was firm. "That is an order, Corpsman." "Let me stay," Kat begged. "You take them up. I can keep working." Donovan grabbed her shoulders. "Listen to me. Your job is not dying here. Your job is getting those 40 people topside alive. We are 12. They are 40. Do the math." The same math she taught her students now. The cold, brutal mathematics of triage. Chief Danny Wright and Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez physically carried Kat to the escape trunk. She fought them every step of the way, screaming that she would not leave, that they needed her, that she could save them if they just let her stay. But they loaded her into the submersible anyway, along with 40 crew members and the 3 critical patients she had stabilized. The hatch sealed with a hydraulic hiss. The last thing Kat saw through the porthole was Donovan's face. He pressed his hand against the glass and mouthed 3 words. "Live for us." Then the submersible detached and began its ascent. Kat monitored her critical patients during the rise, hands moving on autopilot, mind screaming. She knew what was happening below, knew her team was buying time, holding the submarine together long enough for rescue vessels to arrive for a second trip. She knew they would not make it. The radio crackled when they were 200 feet from the surface. "Reeves, this is Donovan. The flooding is worse than we thought. Hull integrity is failing. We are not going to make it out." Cat grabbed the radio. "Hold on. Hold position. We will send the submersible back down." "Negative. Not enough time." Donovan's voice was calm, eerily calm. "Listen to me carefully. Those 3 men you saved, they all have families waiting for them. The 40 crew members with you. Some of them have kids who need their fathers to come home. You kept them alive. That was the mission." "That was not the mission," Cat screamed into the radio. "The mission was getting everyone out. The mission was maximizing survival. We did that." Donovan paused. "I am proud of you, Cat." Eric never called her Cat. Always Reeves or Corman. The use of her nickname meant this was goodbye. "You became exactly what I knew you could be. The best combat medic I ever worked with." Chief Wright's voice came on. "Tell my wife I love her. Tell her the life insurance will take care of everything." Rodriguez, "Tell Maria I was going to propose. Tell her I loved her." One by one, all 12 men said their goodbyes. Calm, professional, accepting. Then the radio went silent. 3 minutes later, sonar detected a massive implosion at 400 feet. USS Connecticut's hull finally gave way under pressure and hostile damage. Everyone still aboard died instantly. The submersible broke the surface into chaos. Rescue ships everywhere. Helicopters. Spotlights cutting through darkness. Cat was pulled from the submersible, still trying to monitor her patients, still believing somehow there would be a second rescue. But there was no second rescue. Only bodies recovered weeks later when the Navy finally sent down remote vehicles to survey the wreckage. Cat stood on the beach at Coronado, tears mixing with rain and ocean spray, and finally let herself feel all of it. The guilt, the rage, the terrible helpless grief of surviving when better people died. She heard footsteps behind her. Webb appeared, soaked to the skin, and stood beside her without speaking. They watched the storm rage together. "You were not supposed to follow me," Cat said. "Someone needed to make sure you did not walk into the ocean." I thought about it, right after it happened. Thought about just swimming out until I could not swim anymore. "Why did you not?" "Because 40 people were alive because of me, and they deserve better than a medic who quit." Cat wiped her face, but it did not feel like enough. Still does not. "It never will," Webb said quietly. "That is the curse of surviving. You carry them forever, but carrying them does not mean drowning under their weight." "How do you carry them without drowning?" "You find something worth carrying them for." Webb turned to face her. "For me, it was teaching, making sure their knowledge lived on. For you, it might be the same thing, or it might be something else, but you cannot figure it out if you let the ocean take you." Cat looked at the waves, black and violent and hungry. They reminded her too much of that night, of cold water closing over her head, of pressure crushing down, of men dying while she lived. "Tell me the rest," Webb said. "There is more. I can see it." Cat took a shuddering breath. "When I got to the surface, I was 8 weeks pregnant." Webb went very still. "Eric and I had been together for 6 months. Nobody knew. Fraternization rules. We were going to figure it out after the deployment." Cat's voice broke. "I lost the baby 2 days after the rescue. The pressure damage, the stress. The doctors said I would never carry a child to term. The submarine took everything." "Jesus," Webb whispered. "So yes, I think about walking into the ocean. I think about it every time I see water. Because what is the point of surviving if everything that mattered died?" "The point is those 40 people," Webb said firmly. "The point is Hayes and your other students who are learning to save lives because you are teaching them. The point is that your team died completing a mission, and you dishonor that mission by wishing you were dead too." "They died for nothing," Cat said. "The submarine sank anyway. Everyone aboard died anyway. We just delayed it by 2 hours." "You saved 40 lives. That is not nothing. It is not enough. It never is." Webb grabbed her shoulders and made her look at him. "Listen to me. I have spent 13 years trying to make my team's deaths mean something, trying to save enough lives to balance the scale. You know what I learned? The scale never balances. You cannot save enough people to make up for the ones you lost, but you can honor them by using what they taught you, by passing it on, by making sure their sacrifice creates a legacy that outlives all of us." "How?" "By accepting that you survived for a reason, by accepting that your skill, your knowledge, Your ability to do the impossible under pressure, those things matter. Webb's voice was urgent now. By accepting the damn Navy Cross and standing in front of a room of young corpsmen and telling them the truth, that combat medicine is about cold math and hard choices and living with the weight of those choices. That you can do everything right and people still die. But you try anyway because trying is the only thing that gives any of this meaning. Kat stared at him through the rain. What if I fail? What if I teach them wrong? What if someone dies because of something I said or did not say? Then you will carry that too. But you are already carrying 12 ghosts. What is a few more if it means hundreds of people live who would otherwise die? The words were harsh, but true. Kat felt them settle into her chest like stones. Heavy, but somehow stabilizing. Ballast to keep her from drifting away completely. I need to think, she said. Think fast. Storm is getting worse. They walked back to the base together, leaning into wind that tried to push them sideways. By the time they reached the medical facility, rain was falling so hard, visibility was down to a few feet. Inside, the emergency generators hummed. The facility was crowded with people taking shelter. Kat saw Hayes organizing supplies, Rodriguez checking equipment, Commander Morrison coordinating with base security. Morrison spotted Kat and waved her over. We might have a situation. Weather Service is saying this storm is worse than predicted. Flash flood warnings for the whole county. We could see casualties. What do you need? Get your students ready. If we get mass casualties, I will need every trained person available. Morrison's expression was grim. This could get bad. 2 hours later, it got bad. The call came in at 1900 hours. Multiple vehicle accidents on Interstate 5. Heavy flooding causing cars to hydroplane and crash. Estimated 20-plus casualties. Some critical. County hospitals overwhelmed. Naval base requested to provide emergency medical support. All hands, Morrison ordered. Set up triage in the main bay. Move. Kat found herself directing the response without consciously deciding to take charge. She positioned students at key points, assigned roles based on capability, organized equipment, with the efficiency of someone who had done this before in worse conditions. Hayes appeared at her side. What do you need me to do? Take triage station 1. You remember the categories? Red for immediate, yellow for delayed, green for minor, black for expectant. Hayes' voice was steady. Good. Remember your training. Fast assessment. Trust your judgment. The first ambulance arrived 15 minutes later. Then another. Then 3 more. Suddenly the facility was full of injured people, screaming and bleeding and dying, and Kat was moving through the chaos like water, fast and fluid and unstoppable. Red tag, tension pneumothorax. Get him to Bay 3. Yellow tag, broken ribs, no respiratory compromise. Hold for secondary assessment. Green tag, minor lacerations. Send to the waiting area. She worked for 3 hours straight without stopping. Needle decompression on a drowning victim. Chest tube placement on a crush injury. Emergency cricothyrotomy when a patient's airway swelled shut from allergic reaction to something in the floodwater. At one point, she looked up and saw Webb watching her with an expression of awe. You are in your element, he said. This is what I was trained for. No, this is what you were born for. Kat did not have time to respond. Another ambulance was arriving. The worst case came at 2200. A family of 4 pulled from a submerged vehicle. Father and mother unconscious. 2 children, ages 8 and 10, hypothermic and unresponsive. Kat assessed the children first. The 8-year-old girl had a pulse but was not breathing. The 10-year-old boy had neither. Hayes, start CPR on the boy, Kat ordered. I will handle the girl. She intubated the girl with movements born of muscle memory, placed the tube perfectly on the first attempt, and began manual ventilation. The girl's chest rose and fell. Good. Airway secured. But her core temperature was 89 degrees. Severe hypothermia. Her heart could stop at any moment. Get me warming blankets and heated IV fluids, Kat called out. And someone start active rewarming protocols. The girl's heart rhythm was unstable. Ventricular fibrillation. Kat grabbed the defibrillator, charged it, and delivered a shock. Nothing. Another shock. Still nothing. She is too cold, Rodriguez said. Defibrillation does not work below 90 degrees. I know. Kat started chest compressions. We rewarm her while maintaining perfusion. Keep blood moving, keep oxygen flowing, and pray her heart restarts when her temperature comes up. 15 minutes of CPR. 20, 30. Kat's arms burned. Sweat poured down her face. The girl's temperature slowly climbed. 90 degrees, 92. At 94 degrees, the heart monitor showed a rhythm change. From chaotic fibrillation to something almost organized. Kat hit her with the defibrillator again. The girl's body jerked. The monitor showed normal sinus rhythm. "We have her back," Kat announced. "Continue warming. Monitor closely." She turned to Hayes, still doing CPR on the boy. "How long?" 40 minutes. Any response? No pulse. No respiratory effort. Kat walked over and checked the monitor. Flatline. She placed her fingers on the boy's neck, feeling for any sign of life. Nothing. "Time of death, 23:14, Kat said quietly. Hayes stopped, compressions, tears streaming down her face. "I tried. I did everything right." "You did. Some patients cannot be saved." Kat's voice was gentle. "You gave him every chance." "But he is just a kid." "I know, but his sister is alive. Focus on that." Kat moved back to the girl, who was starting to show signs of consciousness. The child's eyes fluttered open, confused and terrified. "You are safe," Kat said softly. "You are at the hospital. We are taking care of you." The girl tried to speak. Kat quieted her. "Do not talk yet. You have a tube helping you breathe. We will take it out soon. Just rest." The girl's hand found Kat's and gripped tight. Kat held on, this tiny hand in hers, and felt something shift inside her chest. This child was alive because of choices Kat had made. Quick assessments, correct procedures, refusing to give up even when the odds were terrible. Just like the 3 critical patients in the submarine. Just like the 40 crew members who survived. This was what Eric had meant. This was the mission. Not saving everyone because that was impossible, but saving the savable. Giving people a chance they would not otherwise have. Living for them, all of them. The storm finally broke around midnight. Rain stopped. Wind died. The world outside slowly returned to something approaching normal. Inside the medical facility, Kat and her team had treated 43 casualties. 38 would survive. 5 had died, including the 10-year-old boy and 2 adults from separate accidents. Kat stood in the break room afterward, staring at coffee she was too exhausted to drink. Webb found her there. "Hell of a night," he said. "Hell of a night," Kat agreed. "You saved a lot of people. Lost 5. You cannot save everyone." "I know," Kat looked at him. "I really know now. Not just intellectually. I feel it, understand it." She paused. "Eric tried to teach me that. Made me promise to live for them. I did not understand what he meant until tonight." "What did he mean?" "Living is not just surviving. It is using what they gave me. The training, the knowledge, the example of people who chose duty over safety." Kat set down the coffee. "I am going to accept the Navy Cross and the teaching position and whatever else comes with trying to make their sacrifice mean something." Webb smiled. "Good, because you are damn good at this." "I am terrified." "Also good. Fear keeps you sharp." Kat laughed for the first time in what felt like years. "When do I start?" "You already did. Tonight you taught 20 students what real combat medicine looks like. They will never forget it." "Neither will I," Kat said. She looked through the window at the medical bay, where Hayes was helping clean up, where Rodriguez was restocking supplies, where young corpsmen were learning that medicine was not about glory or perfection. It was about showing up when people needed you and doing the best you could with what you had. That was the legacy Eric and his team had left her. That was what she would pass on. Not perfection, not fearlessness, but competence and courage and the willingness to make hard choices when lives hung in the balance. Kat walked back into the bay and began helping with the cleanup. Webb joined her. Together, they put the facility back in order, preparing for whatever came next. Because there would always be a next. Another emergency, another crisis, another chance to save lives or lose them. But Kat was ready now. Not because she had conquered her fear or made peace with her losses, but because she finally understood what Eric had known all along. The mission was not about her survival. It was about using that survival to help others survive. That was worth carrying ghosts for. That was worth living for. 3 weeks after the storm, Kat stood in front of a mirror adjusting her dress uniform. The Navy Cross ceremony was scheduled for 1400 hours. Admiral Richardson himself would be flying in from Norfolk to present the medal, along with the posthumous awards for the 12 men of SEAL Team 3. Her hands shook as she fastened the buttons. Not from fear this time, from something else, acceptance maybe, or the beginning of peace. Commander Morrison appeared in the doorway. "You ready?" "As ready as I will ever be." "Eric would be proud," Morrison said quietly. Kat nodded, not trusting her voice. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of preparation, official statements, interviews with Navy public affairs, coordination with the families of her fallen teammates. Each conversation had been a small death, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. But each conversation had also been necessary. The families deserved to know their men had died as heroes, that their sacrifice had saved 40 lives, that their medical corpsman had survived and was trying her best to honor their memory. The ceremony would be held in the base chapel, the same place Kat had broken down and been rebuilt by Webb's words. Now it would be where she officially accepted the weight of survival and the responsibility that came with it. Hayes met her outside the chapel, also in dress uniform. "Ma'am, the families are asking for you." Kat's stomach tightened. She had spoken to them on the phone, written letters, but meeting them in person felt different, more real, more painful. She found them gathered in a side room. 12 families, wives and children and parents who had lost someone they loved because of choices made in darkness beneath the waves. Kat expected anger, blame, the accusations she had leveled at herself for 18 months. Instead, she found gratitude. Eric's wife, Sarah, approached first. She was 40, with graying hair and her husband's kind eyes. She pulled Kat into a hug that felt like absolution. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "Thank you for being with him at the end, for trying to save him." "I could not," Kat said, tears already starting. "I tried, but I could not." "I know," Sarah pulled back and looked at Kat directly. "Eric wrote me a letter before that mission. He told me that if anything happened, I should find you and tell you something." She took a breath. "He said you were the best medic he ever worked with, that you would blame yourself if anything went wrong, that I should tell you he made his own choice. They all did. And that choice was making sure you survived to save others." The words broke something inside Kat. She had carried Eric's death like a stone, never imagining he had predicted her guilt and tried to ease it before he died. Chief Wright's widow came next, then Rodriguez's fiancé, then parents and siblings and children who barely remembered their fathers. One by one, they thanked Kat for being there, for trying, for surviving to tell their stories. A young boy, maybe 8, tugged on Kat's sleeve. He had Rodriguez's eyes. "My dad talked about you," the boy said. "In his letters, he said you could do anything, that you were like a superhero." Kat knelt down to his level. "Your dad was the superhero. He saved a lot of people." "Did he save you?" "Yes, many times." The boy nodded solemnly. "Then I am glad he did." Kat had to excuse herself to cry in private. Webb found her in the chapel restroom, mascara running, trying to pull herself together. "They do not blame you," he said. "They should. No, they understand something you are just learning, that their loved ones died as warriors, completing a mission, protecting others. There is honor in that." Webb handed her a tissue. "The guilt you carry is yours alone. They do not want you to have it." Kat wiped her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Not the broken ghost who had arrived at Coronado 3 months ago. Someone different, harder in some ways, softer in others. Someone who might actually survive this. The ceremony was beautiful and terrible. Admiral Richardson spoke about sacrifice and duty and the debt the nation owed to warriors who gave everything. He presented the Navy Cross to each family, speaking each name with reverence. Lieutenant Commander Eric Donovan, Chief Petty Officer Danny Wright, Petty Officer First Class Marcus Rodriguez. 12 names, 12 lives, 12 families forever changed. Then he called Kat forward. Petty Officer First Class Catherine Reeves. Kat walked to the front of the chapel on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The Admiral pinned the Navy Cross to her uniform, the medal heavy against her chest. "For extraordinary heroism while serving as medical officer attached to SEAL Team 3 during Operation Neptune's Fury," the Admiral read. Petty Officer Reeves demonstrated exceptional courage and medical expertise under the most extreme conditions imaginable. While trapped in a disabled submarine at 400 feet under enemy action, she performed advanced surgical procedures that saved 3 critically wounded sailors. Her actions under fire, her refusal to abandon casualties, and her ultimate survival ensured that 40 crew members returned safely to their families. Her conduct reflects great credit upon herself and upholds the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. The chapel erupted in applause. Kat stood frozen, the metal burning like a brand. She looked out at the audience and saw Hayes crying, Morrison smiling with pride, Webb nodding with approval. And the families of SEAL Team 3, standing and applauding like she was the hero instead of the survivor. Kat forced herself to remain standing until the ceremony ended. Then she escaped to the beach, still in her dress uniform, needing air and space, and the sound of waves to drown out the noise in her head. Webb found her an hour later, sitting in the sand, staring at the ocean that had tried to kill her. "You okay?" he asked. "I wore their medal," Kat said. "I stood there and accepted recognition for surviving while they died." "You earned that medal. You saved lives in conditions that would have broken most people, but they died." "Yes, and now you carry their legacy forward." "That is what the medal means. Not that you are better than them, that you represent them. Their skill, their courage, their sacrifice." Webb sat down beside her. "Every time someone sees that medal and asks about it, you get to tell their story. Keep them alive in memory." Kat touched the medal, feeling its weight. "Is it always this hard?" Number Webb smiled slightly. "Eventually it just becomes part of you. The weight gets distributed, you learn to carry it without falling down." They sat in silence as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. "How long did it take you," Kat asked, "to feel like you deserve to keep living?" 13 years. But I had nobody pushing me to accept it faster. You have Morrison. You have me. You have 20 students who need you to be okay so they can learn from you. That helps. Does it get easier? No, but it gets different. Less crushing, more purposeful. Kat nodded and stood. The metal caught the setting sunlight, gleaming. "Okay, I am ready to go back." "Good, because we have a staff meeting in the morning. Morrison wants to expand the training program. She thinks you should lead it." "Of course she does," Kat said. But she was smiling. The next morning started with routine. Staff meeting, class schedules, equipment inventory. The comfortable rhythm of military life that Kat was beginning to find grounding instead of suffocating. She was reviewing lesson plans when the base alarm system activated. Security alert. All personnel maintain vigilance. Suspicious activity reported near the perimeter fence. Security forces responding. Kat looked up from her desk. False alarms happened occasionally, usually teenagers trying to get a look at the base. Nothing serious. But something felt wrong. The alarm continued for 5 minutes, then 10. Then Commander Morrison's voice came over the intercom. "Medical personnel report to the clinic immediately. Prepare for potential mass casualty situation. This is not a drill." Kat grabbed her gear and ran. The clinic was already mobilizing when she arrived. Hayes was setting up triage stations. Rodriguez was pulling trauma supplies. Morrison stood at the command desk coordinating with base security. "What is the situation?" Kat asked. "Unknown." Morrison's face was grim. "Security found evidence of a breach at the north fence. Multiple entry points. We have teams searching now, but we are going on alert status. If this is what I think it is, we need to be ready." "What do you think it is?" Morrison met her eyes. "Terrorism." The word hung in the air like smoke. Naval bases had been targeted before. Attacks designed to kill service members and steal classified technology. Coronado held both in abundance. Suddenly, the intercom crackled with gunfire in the background. Shots fired at the research and development facility. Multiple hostiles. Security forces engaged. "We have casualties. Medical standby for emergency transport." "Here we go," Morrison said. "Kat, you have triage. Get your people ready." The first casualties arrived within minutes. 2 security forces, personnel with gunshot wounds. Both conscious and stable but needing immediate care. Kat assessed quickly. Bullet through the shoulder. Through and through. No arterial damage. Second casualty, gut shot. That was worse. Potential intestinal perforation. Risk of sepsis. Needed surgery fast. "Get him to OR prep," Kat ordered. "The other one can wait for secondary treatment." More casualties arrived. A civilian contractor caught in crossfire. A Marine with shrapnel wounds from an explosion. The facility was turning into a combat hospital, and Kat moved through it like she was born for this. Because she was. Hayes worked beside her, hands steady now, applying lessons learned over 3 months of intensive training. Rodriguez managed supplies with calm efficiency. Even the newest students stepped up, performing under pressure because Kat had taught them how. Then Webb appeared, and Kat's heart sank. He was in full tactical gear, rifle in hand. "I'm going in with the response team," he said. "They need someone with medical training for the assault." "No," Kat said immediately. "You are a teacher now, not an operator. Once a SEAL, always a SEAL." Webb's expression was set. "They have hostages in the research facility, at least 6 civilians. The assault team needs a corpsman who has been under fire before. Take Hayes. Hayes has never seen combat. You know this requires someone with experience. Webb paused. They asked for you specifically, but I volunteered instead. Cat felt icy in her veins. Why? Because you have students who need you here. And because I am 58 years old and expendable, you are 24 and just getting started. The math is simple. The same math Eric had used. The same brutal calculus of triage applied to human lives. I should be the one going, Cat said. You should be the one teaching the next generation. That is your mission now. Webb gripped her shoulder. If something goes wrong, you keep this program running. You keep training medics. You make sure what happened in that submarine never happens again to anyone else. Before Cat could respond, Webb was gone, jogging toward the armory to link up with the assault team. Morrison appeared at Cat's side. He is right, you know. Your place is here. I know, but Cat could not shake the feeling that she was losing someone else, someone important. The assault lasted 40 minutes. Radio chatter filtered through the clinic speakers. Gunfire, explosions, urgent calls for medical support. Cat worked mechanically, treating wounded as they arrived, but her mind was with Webb, imagining him breaching doors, treating casualties under fire, doing what he had done 1,000 times before in Iraq and Afghanistan and a dozen other places that did not officially exist. Then the radio went silent. Morrison tried to raise the assault team. No response. She tried again. Still nothing. Cat felt her heart stop. No, not again. Not Webb too. 5 minutes passed like 5 hours. Then the radio crackled back to life. Assault complete. Hostiles neutralized. Facility secure. We have multiple wounded, need immediate medical evacuation. The voice was not Webb's, it was the team leader's. What is your casualty status? Morrison demanded. 6 wounded, 3 critical. Morrison's voice did not waver. Names? A pause. Then the list came through. 4 names Cat did not recognize. And Senior Chief Marcus Webb. Critical, multiple gunshot wounds. We need a trauma team standing by. Cat ran. She met the helicopter on the landing pad, wind from the rotors whipping her hair. The crew chief jumped out and helped pull a stretcher. Webb lay on it, unconscious, chest covered in blood. Cat's training took over. She assessed with hands that refused to shake. 3 gunshot wounds, right shoulder, left chest, abdomen. The chest wound was the worst. Possible pneumothorax, definite massive bleeding. Get him inside, she ordered. Or one, now. They wheeled Webb through the clinic at a dead run. Cat never left his side, already planning the surgery in her head. Control bleeding first. Stabilize chest. Deal with abdominal trauma second. In the OR, she scrubbed while nurses prepped Webb. Morrison appeared at the door. I can call in a surgeon from county. No time, I can do this. Cat, this is not a submarine, we have resources here. You do not have to. Cat looked at Webb's pale face through the OR window. Yes, I do. He went in there instead of me. He took my place because he thought I was more valuable. I am not letting him die believing that. She entered the OR and got to work. The surgery was the hardest thing Cat had ever attempted. Webb's injuries were catastrophic. The chest wound had collapsed his lung and damaged the subclavian artery. Blood filled his chest cavity faster than she could drain it. Cat opened his chest, found the bleeder, and clamped it with shaking hands. Blood everywhere. She could barely see what she was doing, but she had trained for this, had performed similar procedures in worse conditions. In a flooded submarine with rising water and failing lights. In a storm with injured civilians and no backup. In 100 scenarios she had imagined and prepared for because she refused to be helpless ever again. Hayes assisted, following Cat's instructions without question. Rodriguez managed anesthesia. The team worked in perfect synchronization, moving like a single organism dedicated to one purpose: keep Marcus Webb alive. An hour into surgery, Webb's heart stopped. Defib? Cat ordered. Hayes handed her the paddles. Clear. Webb's body jerked. The monitor showed continued flatline. Again, clear. Another shock. Another flatline. Cat started chest compressions, counting in her head, refusing to accept failure. Webb had survived Afghanistan, survived losing his entire team, survived 13 years of guilt and training and trying to make dead men's sacrifices mean something. He was not dying now, not on her watch. She compressed his chest for 3 minutes while Hayes prepared medications. Epinephrine, atropine, everything that might restart a dying heart. Cat delivered another shock. The monitor flickered, showed a weak rhythm, then stronger. We have him back, she announced. Continue surgery. 3 hours later, Cat closed the final incision. Webb was stable, alive, sedated but breathing on his own. The odds had been against him. The injuries should have been fatal, but Kat had refused to let them be. She stepped out of the OR, exhausted, covered in Webb's blood, and found Morrison waiting. "He is going to make it," Kat said. Morrison pulled her into a hug. "You saved him. He saved me first." This was just returning the favor. The next 48 hours were a blur. 12 terrorists had attacked the base, attempting to steal classified drone technology from the research facility. Security forces had killed 11, captured 1. Webb and 5 other responders had been wounded in the assault that freed 6 hostages. Total casualties, 17 wounded, 0 dead. Kat had personally treated 8 of the wounded, including performing the emergency surgery on Webb that Navy doctors later called miraculous. She barely registered the praise. All that mattered was sitting beside Webb's hospital bed, watching him breathe, making sure he kept breathing. He woke on the 3rd day, groggy from medications and surgery, but alive. "Did we win?" he asked, voice rough. Kat smiled through tears. "We won. Hostages safe. Terrorists dead or captured. Technology secure. Casualties? 17 wounded, 0 dead. You can thank your medic training for that. Everyone you taught performed perfectly under fire. Even you? Especially me." Webb closed his eyes. "Good. Then it was worth it." "What was worth it?" "Getting shot. Proving you could do this without me holding your hand." He opened his eyes again. "You saved my life, Kat. Performed surgery I would not have attempted. You have become exactly what Eric knew you could be." "Do not ever do that again," Kat said. "Do not ever take a bullet that should have been mine." "Cannot promise that. It is what we do. We take bullets for people we care about. We make the hard choice so they do not have to." Webb's hand found hers. "But I will promise to survive, because you need someone to keep you honest when you start thinking you are invincible." "I am not invincible." "No, but you are extraordinary, and the Navy is going to figure that out soon." He was right. 2 weeks later, Kat received orders transferring her to Naval Special Warfare Command Headquarters in Little Creek, Virginia. Promotion to Chief Petty Officer. Assignment as Director of Advanced Combat Medical Training for all Special Operations Forces. The youngest person ever appointed to the position. Morrison delivered the news personally. "They want you to design the curriculum for every corpsman deploying with SEALs, Raiders, and Special Warfare Combatant Craft. Build a program that ensures what happened to your team never happens again." Kat read the orders 3 times, not quite believing them. "This is huge," she said. "This is your legacy," Morrison corrected. "Eric and his team died so you could train the next generation. Now you get to do exactly that." "What about my students here? What about Hayes?" "Hayes is coming with you. She requested transfer as your assistant instructor." Morrison smiled. "You have built something here, Catherine. Something that matters. Now you get to expand it." "What about Webb?" "Webb is retiring next month. But he told me to tell you something." Morrison pulled out a piece of paper. He wrote this before his surgery, just in case. Kat unfolded the paper and read Webb's handwriting. "Kat, if you are reading this, I either survived or did not. Either way, remember what I taught you. Carrying the dead is not about guilt. It is about honor. You honor them by living fully, teaching completely, and never hiding your light because you think you do not deserve to shine. Your team died so 40 people could live. Now 40,000 people will live because of what you teach. That is mathematics even Eric would approve of. Make me proud. Make them all proud. Marcus." Kat folded the paper carefully and put it in her pocket. "When do I leave?" 30 days. Morrison extended her hand. "It has been an honor serving with you." "The honor was mine," Kat said. That night, Kat walked the beach one last time. She stood at the edge of the water and looked out at the ocean that had taken so much from her. The ocean that had tried to kill her and failed. She was not afraid anymore. She pulled the Navy Cross from her pocket, the medal she had carried every day since the ceremony. In the moonlight, it gleamed like a promise. "I am going to make this mean something," Kat said to the ocean, to the night, to the ghosts she carried. "All of you, every sacrifice, every life lost. I'm going to teach 1,000 medics to be better than I was, faster, smarter, more prepared, so that when they face their impossible moment, they save everyone. Not just the ones math says are savable, everyone." The ocean had no answer, but Kat did not need one. She knew what Eric would say, what Webb would say, what all 12 of her fallen teammates would say. "We believe in you. Now go prove us right." Kat turned away from the ocean and walked back toward the lights of the base. toward Hayes, who was waiting to learn, toward a future that terrified and excited her in equal measure, toward a mission that would define the rest of her life. She was Catherine Reeves, Navy Cross recipient, survivor of Operation Neptune's Fury, protector of 40 lives and soon-to-be teacher of thousands more. She was 24 years old, and she was just getting started. 6 months later, Kat stood in front of 200 students at the Naval Special Warfare Advanced Medical Training Center in Little Creek, Virginia. The building was new, constructed specifically for the program she had designed. State-of-the-art equipment, simulation labs that could replicate any combat environment, instructors hand-picked from every special operations branch. And at the center of it all, a memorial wall. 12 names engraved in black granite. SEAL Team 3, Operation Neptune's Fury. The men who had died so she could stand here teaching the next generation how to save lives when the odds said it was impossible. Kat touched the wall every morning before classes started. A ritual, a reminder, a promise kept. "Good morning," she said to the assembled students. "I am Chief Petty Officer Catherine Reeves. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you how to perform combat medicine at a level most people think is impossible. I'm going to push you harder than you have ever been pushed. Some of you will quit. That is fine. This program is not for everyone." She paused, letting her eyes sweep across the faces. Young men and women, eager and terrified in equal measure, just like she had been once. "But those of you who finish will be able to do things that save lives in conditions where death is the expected outcome. You will perform surgery in darkness, treat wounds under fire, make impossible choices with confidence, and you will carry the knowledge that you represent something bigger than yourselves." Hayes stood at the side of the room, now a petty officer second class and Kat's primary assistant instructor. She had grown in the past 6 months, harder, more confident, ready to lead. Behind the students, Webb sat in a wheelchair, still recovering from his injuries but insisting on attending the first day of every class. The doctor said he would walk again. Eventually, Webb said he would be running the obstacle course by Christmas. Kat believed him. "Let me tell you about the first time I had to choose who lives and who dies," Kat continued. "I was 22 years old, 400 feet underwater, in a submarine that was flooding. I had 12 critically wounded patients and supplies for maybe 6. I had to do triage, knowing that my choices would determine who went home to their families and who did not. The room was completely silent. Even the students who thought they knew what combat medicine meant were paying attention now. I made my choices based on math. Cold, brutal math. Who had the best chance of survival? Who I could save with the time and equipment available? Who I had to let go?" Kat's voice was steady. 3 patients, critical but savable. I spent 2 hours performing procedures that should have killed them. Emergency thoracotomy, vascular repair, airway management in conditions no textbook ever covered. And I saved them, all 3. She let that sink in. But while I was doing that, my team was buying me time. 12 SEALs holding back enemy action, managing the submarine's flooding, making sure I could work without interruption. And when evacuation came, they put me on the first submersible out with the survivors. She touched the Navy Cross on her uniform. They died completing the mission, which was not killing the enemy or destroying the submarine. It was making sure 40 sailors went home alive. A hand went up. Young woman, maybe 23. "What if you had moved faster? Could you have saved your team too?" Kat met her eyes. "I have asked myself that question every day for 2 years. The answer is maybe. Or maybe everyone would have died if I had rushed the procedures. Or maybe I would have made a mistake that killed those 3 critical patients." She paused. Combat medicine is not about perfect solutions. It is about making the best choice you can with imperfect information and living with the consequences. "How do you live with it?" the woman asked quietly. "By teaching you. By making sure the knowledge my team died protecting gets passed on to hundreds of medics who will save thousands of lives, by accepting that their sacrifice only has meaning if I use what they gave me." Kat gestured to the memorial wall. "Those 12 names represent 12 lives, but they also represent 12 lifetimes of experience and expertise. That knowledge did not die with them. It lives on through me, and now through you." The class ran for 8 hours with a short break for lunch. Kat taught them the fundamentals of tactical combat casualty care, hemorrhage control, airway management, the hard math of triage. She demonstrated techniques on training mannequins, but she also told stories. Real stories from real operations. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and the South China Sea. By the end of the day, every student looked exhausted but energized. They were beginning to understand what they had signed up for. Hayes approached after the last student left. That was intense. It needed to be. Kat started organizing equipment for the next day's class. If they cannot handle the stories, they cannot handle the reality. You were right to include the personal details. They needed to know this is not just procedures. It is about people. Kat nodded. She had struggled with how much to share, how much of Operation Neptune's fury to make public. Webb had given her the answer. Tell them everything. Let them see the cause. Let them understand what they are preparing for. Webb wheeled over, looking tired but satisfied. Hell of a first day. You think they are ready for week 2? Week 2 is going to break half of them, but the ones who survive will be ready for anything. Webb smiled, just like their instructor. That evening, Kat returned to her quarters on base. Small apartment, Spartan furnishings, but on the wall, photos that had not been there 6 months ago. Eric Donovan and the rest of SEAL Team 3, smiling around a campfire. Hayes receiving her promotion to second class. Webb in his hospital bed, giving a thumbs up despite being wrapped in bandages. The families at the Navy cross ceremony, hugging Kat like she was one of their own. Kat was learning to live with memories instead of running from them. Learning that photographs did not have to hurt. That remembering could be honoring instead of torturing. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Saw the news about your new program. Eric would be proud. We all are. Stay strong. Sarah Donovan. Kat smiled and saved the message. Sarah texted every few weeks. Small updates about her daughters. Questions about Navy procedures. The occasional memory of Eric that she wanted to share. The messages had become something Kat looked forward to. A connection to the man who had believed in her when she did not believe in herself. She texted back, "Thank you, teaching his lessons every day." The weeks passed in a blur of intensive training. Kat pushed her students through scenarios that tested their skills and their resolve. Mass casualty events, chemical exposure, underwater emergencies. Every situation designed to force them past their breaking point and teach them they could survive on the other side. 40 students started the program. By week 6, 22 remained. The others had quit or been cut for not meeting standards. Kat felt each loss personally but knew it was necessary. Better they failed here than in combat, where failure meant dead teammates. Hayes proved to be an exceptional instructor, patient but demanding, able to explain complex procedures in ways that made sense under pressure. The students responded to her because she had been where they were, uncertain, afraid, learning to trust skills that seemed impossible. One afternoon, Kat was demonstrating advanced airway procedures when a student collapsed. Seizure, full tonic-clonic. The young man thrashed on the floor, airway compromised, risk of aspiration and death increasing every second. Kat dropped into crisis mode instantly. Hayes, protect his head. Someone get the suction kit. Nobody panic. But she was not talking to the instructors. She was talking to the students. This was a teachable moment. Rodriguez, what is your assessment? Kat called out to one of the students. The young man knelt beside the seizing patient. Generalized tonic-clonic seizure. Airway at risk. Possible aspiration. Need to establish definitive airway once seizure stops. Correct. Martinez, what medications? Midazolam to stop the seizure. Possibly intubation drugs if he does not wake up appropriately. Good. Henderson, what is your biggest concern? Aspiration pneumonia if he vomits and we cannot protect his airway. Kat nodded. Now watch. She managed the seizure with calm efficiency, protecting the airway, positioning for safety, administering medications. The seizure stopped after 90 seconds. The student came around confused but alive. The entire class had watched a real emergency unfold and seen their instructor handle it like it was choreographed, which in a sense it was. Thousands of hours of training and experience compressed into 90 seconds of perfect execution. That is what muscle memory looks like, Kat told them. You train until the procedures are automatic, until your hands know what to do even when your brain is screaming. That is how you save lives when there is no time to think. The student who had seized was sent to the hospital for evaluation. Undiagnosed epilepsy. He would be medically discharged from the program. Kat visited him that evening. I am sorry, the young man said. I let you down. You did not let anyone down. You have a medical condition. That does not make you a failure. But I wanted to finish, wanted to be like you. Kat sat down beside his bed. Being like me means accepting that sometimes things do not work out the way you plan, that you can do everything right and still lose. She paused. You gave your best effort. That is all anyone can ask. What will you do if I cannot continue? I will write you a recommendation for any program you want, and I will tell them that you have the heart of a warrior, even if your body will not cooperate. Heart matters more than you think. The young man wiped his eyes. Thank you, Chief. Kat left the hospital feeling the weight of responsibility. Every student represented a future, a career, a chance to save lives. When they succeeded, she felt pride. When they failed, she felt the loss personally. Webb was waiting outside in his wheelchair, still not walking but getting closer every day. You cannot save them all, he said. I know, but I can try. That is what makes you good at this. You care, but do not let caring destroy you. Webb looked up at the evening sky. I spent years trying to save every student, trying to make sure none of them died in combat. It is impossible. People die, even good people, even people you train perfectly. How do you accept that? By knowing you gave them the best possible chance. By measuring success not in 0 deaths but in maximum survivability. Webb smiled slightly. You have trained 200 students in 6 months. 50 have already deployed. How many casualties have they treated? Kat had been tracking this. 73 total casualties. 68 survived. 5 did not. 68 lives saved by people you trained. That is your legacy, not the 5 who died despite best efforts. Kat nodded, but the 5 deaths still hurt. 5 families getting the worst news. 5 flag-covered coffins. 5 futures erased. Come on, Webb said. Let me buy you terrible coffee and tell you about the dumbest thing a student did this week. They went to the base commissary and talked for hours. About training, about loss, about the strange alchemy of turning tragedy into purpose. Webb had been doing this for 20 years. Kat was just beginning, but she was learning. 3 months into the program, Kat received a classified briefing request. SEAL Team 7 needed an embedded corpsman for a high-risk operation. The target was a terrorist compound in the Middle East. Multiple buildings, unknown number of hostiles, high probability of casualties. They wanted someone with submarine rescue experience, someone who could work in confined spaces under extreme pressure, someone who had proven they could perform impossible medicine in impossible conditions. They wanted Kat. She sat in the briefing room, staring at the mission folder. This was what she had trained for, what her entire team had died preparing her to do, a chance to use her skills in combat again, to prove she could still do this. But accepting meant leaving her students, leaving the program she had built, potentially dying and making all the work of the past 2 years meaningless. Hayes found her in the briefing room an hour later. You are thinking about going, Hayes said. It was not a question. How did you know? Because I know you. You are a warrior. Teaching is important, but part of you still wants to be in the fight. Kat closed the folder. I do not know what I want. Yes, you do. You want to honor your team by using what they taught you. But you are afraid that if you deploy again, you will die and all of this stops. Kat looked at her student who had become her friend. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. Hayes sat down. Let me ask you something. What would Eric want you to do? Kat thought about this letter Sarah had shared, about Eric's final words. Live for us, become the legend we know you can be. He would want me to do whatever helps the most people. Then the answer is obvious. You staying here and training hundreds of medics helps more people than you deploying with one team. The math is simple. The same math Eric had used. The same calculation that had saved 40 lives at the cost of 12. You are right, Kat said. My mission is here now. Good, because we have 60 students arriving next week, and they need you to teach them how to be extraordinary. Kat declined the deployment. SEAL Team 7 found another corpsman. The mission succeeded with minimal casualties. Kat followed the after-action reports and felt no regret. Hayes was right. Her mission was teaching now. But the request had reminded her of something important. The skills she had learned in that submarine were not just hers. They belonged to every medic she could train, every life they could save, every impossible situation they could survive. She needed to document everything. Create a manual that captured not just procedures, but the decision-making process. The mental preparation, the emotional resilience required to make life and death choices under pressure. Kat spent 3 months writing technical procedures, case studies, lessons learned from Operation Neptune's Fury, and every emergency she had faced since. She worked late into the night, reliving every moment. turning trauma into teaching material. Webb reviewed the drafts. This is going to be the definitive text on special operations medicine. It needs to be. Kat highlighted a section. If something happens to me, this knowledge needs to survive. Nothing is going to happen to you. You do not know that. Eric did not know a Chinese submarine would sink the Connecticut. I did not know a terrorist would shoot you. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. The manual was published through Naval Special Warfare Command. Required reading for every corpsman training for special operations. Within a year, it was being taught at medical schools and trauma centers across the country. Kat received letters from medics she had never met, thanking her for the techniques that saved lives, sharing stories of impossible saves in Afghanistan and Syria, and training accidents stateside. Each letter was a small victory, proof that the mission continued. One letter came from a Marine medic in Afghanistan. He had used Kat's underwater emergency procedures to treat a soldier trapped in a collapsed irrigation tunnel. Full of water, limited access, exactly the kind of impossible scenario Kat had faced in the submarine. The medic had performed the same emergency thoracotomy Kat had pioneered. The soldier survived. Kat framed that letter and hung it beside the memorial wall. Proof that Eric's death had meaning beyond grief. That 12 lives lost had created a cascade of lives saved. Hayes read the letter and smiled. This is what legacy looks like. No, Kat said. Legacy is not one letter. It is every medic who reads that manual, every student who learns these techniques, every impossible save that happens because someone was prepared. She touched the memorial wall. This is their legacy. I am just the messenger. The program expanded. Other special operations branches sent their medics to train under CAT, Air Force Pararescue, Marine Raiders, Army Special Forces. The curriculum became the gold standard for combat medicine. Kat was promoted to Senior Chief Petty Officer at age 25, youngest person to hold the rank in Naval Special Warfare. She accepted the promotion with the same ambivalence she had felt about the Navy Cross. She had not earned this through ambition. She had earned it through surviving when others died. But she was learning to accept that survival was not a crime. It was a responsibility. 1 year after starting the program, Kat organized a reunion. Every student who had completed training, every instructor who had contributed, the families of SEAL Team 3, Webb, now walking with a cane but walking nonetheless. They gathered in the training center auditorium, 300 people representing thousands of lives saved and futures protected. Kat stood at the podium looking out at the crowd and felt something she had not felt in 2 years. Peace, not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose strong enough to carry the pain without breaking. 2 years ago, I was drowning, Kat began. Not in water, in guilt, in the belief that I did not deserve to survive when better people died. She paused. I was wrong. Survival is not about deserving. It is about what you do with the life you have been given. She told them about the submarine, about Eric's final order, about spending 18 months trying to hide from skills that could save lives, about Webb finding her and teaching her that carrying the dead meant honoring them, not being crushed by them. My team died completing a mission, Kat said. That mission was not killing the enemy. It was making sure I survived to use what they taught me. For a long time, I thought that was too much pressure, too much responsibility. How could I possibly save enough lives to make their deaths worthwhile? She gestured to the crowd. But then I realized I was asking the wrong question. It is not about saving enough lives to balance some cosmic scale. It is about using their knowledge, their sacrifice, their belief in me to create something that outlasts all of us. She pointed to the students in the front rows. You are that something. Every technique you learn, every life you save, every student you eventually teach. That is my team's legacy, and it will never die as long as you keep passing it on. The room erupted in applause. Kat stood there accepting it, not because she felt she deserved it, but because rejecting it would dishonor everyone who had believed in her. After the ceremony, Sarah Donovan approached with her 2 daughters. Teenagers now, they had their father's eyes. Eric would be so proud, Sarah said. I hope so. I know so. Sarah gestured to her daughters. He used to talk about you, even before that last mission. He said you were going to change combat medicine, that you had a gift for seeing solutions nobody else could see. One of the daughters spoke up. Dad wrote us letters, one for each birthday until we turned 18. She pulled out a worn envelope. This is from my 16th birthday last month. He wrote it 4 years ago. She handed the letter to Kat. The girl's hands were shaking. "Read the last part," the daughter said. Kat unfolded the letter and read Eric's handwriting. "If something happens to me, I want you to know I died doing something that mattered. Protecting people who could not protect themselves. Making sure someone extraordinary got the chance to do extraordinary things. There is a young corpsman on my team named Catherine Reeves. If you ever meet her, thank her for me. Because she is going to save more lives than I ever could. She is going to be a legend." Kat's vision blurred with tears. She handed the letter back carefully. "Thank you for showing me that. Thank you for proving him right," the daughter said. That night, Kat walked the base alone. She ended up at the beach watching waves crash against the shore. The ocean had taken so much from her. Her team, her child, her innocence. But standing there under the stars, Kat realized the ocean had also given her something. A purpose. A mission. A reason to keep living that was bigger than survival. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photo of SEAL Team 3, 12 faces smiling at the camera. Warriors who had believed in her when she did not believe in herself. "I did it," she said to their images. "I built something that matters. Something that will outlive all of us." The waves had no answer, but Kat did not need one. She knew Eric would approve. Knew all 12 of them would approve. She walked back to her quarters and found Webb sitting on the steps. "Could not sleep," he asked. "Too much going on in my head." The reunion brought back memories. Good ones this time. Kat sat beside him. "I think I finally understand what you tried to tell me 2 years ago. About legacy being bigger than survival. It took me 13 years to figure that out. You did it in 2. Webb smiled. "You are faster than I was." "I had a better teacher." They sat in comfortable silence. 2 survivors who had found a way to make their survival mean something. Finally, Webb spoke. "I am retiring next month, for real this time." Kat felt a pang of loss. "What will you do?" "Travel. Write. Maybe teach part-time at a civilian university. But mostly rest. I have earned it." "You have. But before I go, I need to ask you something." Webb turned to face her. "Are you going to be okay? Without me here to keep you grounded?" Kat thought about it honestly. "Yes. Because you taught me how to ground myself. How to carry weight without being crushed. How to honor the dead by serving the living." "Good. Because you do not need me anymore. You have become the person Eric saw in you. The person I saw in you. The person you were always meant to be." Kat hugged him. "Thank you for everything. You would have figured it out eventually. I just sped up this process." They said goodbye the night before Webb's retirement. A small gathering of instructors and former students. Stories and laughter and the kind of camaraderie that came from shared purpose. Webb pulled Kat aside at the end. "One last piece of advice," he said. "I am listening. Do not let this consume you. The teaching, the program, the mission. It is important, but it is not everything." Webb's expression was serious. "I spent 20 years letting my guilt and my duty consume me. I never had a family, never had a life outside the teams. Do not make that mistake. What should I do? Live. Really live. Find someone to love. Have experiences that are not about training or combat or saving the world. Because if you do not, you will wake up at 58 years old and realize you survived, but never actually lived." Kat nodded, filing the advice away. "I will try." "Do not try. Do. That is an order from your old instructor." They hugged one last time and Webb left. Kat watched him walk away, leaning on his cane, but walking nonetheless. A warrior who had survived his wounds and was finally allowing himself to rest. The next morning, Kat received a package. No return address. Inside was a folded flag, the American flag that had covered Eric Donovan's coffin. The note was from Sarah. "Catherine Reeves. Eric would want you to have this. He carried an identical flag on every deployment. Said it reminded him what he was fighting for. Now I want you to have his flag, not to remember his death, but to remember his belief in you. Fly it proudly. Sarah." Kat mounted the flag in the training center lobby. Beneath it, a plaque. "In memory of Lieutenant Commander Eric Donovan and SEAL Team 3. They gave everything so others could live. We honor them by teaching the next generation to save lives in impossible conditions. Their legacy is immortal." Every student who entered the building would see that flag, would read that plaque, would understand they were part of something bigger than themselves. 5 years after Operation Neptune's Fury, Kat stood in the same training center addressing a new class of students. She was 27 now, Senior Chief Petty Officer, Director of the most respected combat medical training program in the world. On her uniform, the Navy Cross gleamed. In her heart, 12 ghosts rested easier. Welcome, she said to the assembled students. I am Senior Chief Catherine Reeves. Over the next 12 weeks, I am going to teach you how to perform miracles, how to save lives when death seems certain, how to make impossible choices with confidence. She paused, looking at each face. But more importantly, I am going to teach you that you are part of a legacy, that every technique you learn was paid for in blood by warriors who believed medicine was as important as marksmanship, who died protecting medics so those medics could protect others. She gestured to the memorial wall where 12 names were now joined by photographs. Young men smiling, warriors at rest. Those men are why you are here. Their knowledge, their sacrifice, their belief that one extraordinary medic could change the world. She met their eyes. Now prove them right. The class began. And somewhere in whatever place warriors go when they die, Eric Donovan smiled. His mission was complete. Catherine Reeves had become exactly what he knew she could be. A legend who saved lives. A teacher who created legends. A survivor who made survival mean everything. The story could have ended there, with Kat standing victorious, her mission clear, her purpose found. But life is not a story with clean endings. 10 years after Operation Neptune's Fury, Kat was a Master Chief Petty Officer, the youngest in naval special warfare history. Her program had trained over 2,000 combat medics. Survival rates for special operations casualties had increased by 40%. The manual she had written was translated into 6 languages. She had achieved everything Eric had believed she could. And yet, Kat stood in front of the memorial wall, now expanded to include casualties from recent conflicts. More names, more faces, more warriors who had given everything. Among the new names was Petty Officer Second Class Jennifer Hayes, killed in action, Afghanistan, died treating wounded under fire, refusing to evacuate until every casualty was stabilized. Kat had attended the funeral, had hugged Hayes' mother, had stood at attention as taps played and a flag was folded, had felt the old guilt rising like water threatening to drown her again. Hayes had been her student, her protege, her friend, and now she was another name on a wall, another ghost to carry. Kat touched Hayes' photo. I taught you everything I knew. Was it enough? The photo had no answer, but Kat knew what Hayes would say. You taught me to save lives. I saved 3 before I died. The math works. The same cold, brutal mathematics that had defined Kat's entire career. More saved than lost. Maximum survivability. Success measured in percentages, not absolutes. Kat had learned to accept the math, but acceptance did not mean it stopped hurting. She walked outside and found Webb waiting. He was 68 now, fully retired for a decade, but he still visited when Kat needed him. You heard about Hayes, Kat said. I did. I am sorry. She died doing what I taught her. She died being exactly what you trained her to be. A warrior who put others first. Webb's voice was gentle. You cannot control what happens after they leave your classroom. You can only give them the best possible chance. Is it enough? It has to be, because the alternative is not teaching them at all, and that guarantees they die unprepared. They sat in silence watching the sunset over the training center. In the distance, students were running obstacle courses, learning, growing, preparing for the moments that would define them. Webb finally spoke. You know what Hayes told me before she deployed? What? She said you saved her life twice. Once when you taught her medicine, and once when you taught her that survival guilt was normal, that carrying the dead meant honoring them, not being destroyed by them. Kat wiped her eyes. I hope she carried them well. She carried them perfectly, just like you taught her. Webb stood slowly, leaning on his cane. Come on, you have a class to teach in the morning. Those students need you to be strong. I'm tired of being strong, I know, but you will do it anyway, because that is who you are. Kat stood and walked back into the training center, past the memorial wall, past the flag that had covered Eric's coffin, past photographs of warriors who had believed in her. She entered her office and found a letter on her desk from Hayes' mother. Chief Reeves, Jennifer wrote about you constantly. She said you were the reason she became a medic, the reason she believed she could do the impossible. I wanted you to know that before she died, she saved 3 Marines, 3 families who still have their sons because my daughter learned from you. That is not nothing. That is everything. Thank you for teaching her well. She died a hero because you made her one. Kat read the letter 3 times, then carefully filed it with all the others. Letters from families thanking her. Letters from students sharing their successes. Letters that proved the mission continued even when individual warriors fell. The math was simple. Hayes saved 3. Those three would save others. The cascade continued, rippling forward through time, touching lives Kat would never meet. That was legacy. That was immortality. That was what Eric had meant. Live for us, not just survive, but create something that outlasts mortality. Pass on knowledge that saves lives long after the teacher is gone. Kat pulled out a piece of paper and began writing. Dear future students, this is what I need you to understand. Combat medicine is not about perfection. It is not about saving everyone. It is about making the best choice possible with imperfect information and accepting the consequences. You will lose patients. Good people will die despite your best efforts. That is not failure. That is the job. But you will also save lives that nobody thought could be saved. You will perform miracles in darkness, and you will create a legacy that extends far beyond your own life. That is what makes this worth doing. Not the victories, the legacy. Carry it well. She signed it, Chief Petty Officer Catherine Reeves, survivor, teacher, keeper of the flame. The next morning, Kat taught her class with the same intensity she always did, pushing students, demanding excellence, sharing the hard truths about combat medicine. And when one student asked how she dealt with losing people she had trained, Kat answered honestly, I carry them, just like I carry my team, just like I will carry every student who dies in service. But I do not let that weight stop me from teaching the next class. Because stopping means more people die unprepared, and that is unacceptable. The student nodded, understanding dawning in young eyes. After class, Kat walked to the beach. The ocean was calm today, almost peaceful. She stood at the water's edge and looked out at the horizon. Somewhere beneath those waves, USS Connecticut rested in pieces, the tomb of 12 warriors who had believed in her, who had died so she could stand here, who had given her a mission that would define her entire life. Thank you, Kat said to the ocean, to the ghosts, to Eric and his team, and Hayes and every warrior who had trusted her with their legacy. I am still fighting, still teaching, still making your sacrifice mean something. The ocean murmured against the shore, eternal, indifferent, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Kat was no longer afraid of it. She had learned that the ocean was like life itself. It could destroy you if you let it, or you could learn to swim in it, work with it, even draw strength from it. She had chosen to swim, to fight, to teach, to live. And as she walked back toward the training center, where another class of students waited, Kat knew that somewhere in whatever place warriors go, 12 ghosts stood at attention. Their mission was complete. They had died protecting something important, someone important, and that someone had made their deaths mean everything. Kat entered the training center, ready to teach, ready to build, ready to create more legends who would save more lives and pass on more knowledge until the end of time. That was the mission now. That was the mission forever. The mission that would never end as long as warriors needed to be taught how to save lives in impossible conditions. Kat looked at the memorial one last time and smiled, not with happiness, but with purpose, with acceptance, with the understanding that carrying the dead meant keeping them alive in the only way that mattered. Through the lives they saved, the knowledge they passed on, the legacy that would outlive them all. She walked into her classroom where 200 students waited to learn how to perform miracles, to save the unsavable, to become legends themselves. And Chief Petty Officer Catherine Reeves began to teach. The end. I spent 3 months researching Kat's story, and what haunts me most isn't the submarine explosion or the 12 SEALs who died. It's the 18 months she spent hiding, convinced her survival was a crime instead of a mission. Here's my question for you veterans out there. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice where someone lived and someone died? How did you carry that weight? And for those who've lost brothers in arms, what would you want your surviving teammates to do with the skills you helped them build? Drop your thoughts below. These stories matter because you make them real.